Sigmar story phase. Grab your hammer so we can clear a path through the chaos and forge our own narratives in the Age of Sigmar. Your allies on the march this episode are...
Hey, I'm Paul. You know what today is? It's Saturday, here for Monster Trug.
Okay.
Hey, it's Paven. I'm here. My bit is, the great flaming wheel in the sky keeps on turning. Oh, I don't know where this Dawnbringer crusade will be tomorrow.
Ooh, I like it. And then, hey, it's Will. Do you know why Pontifex Zenestra is such a good advisor?
Why?
Because she only has really good ideas.
And I'm Aaron, and just so you guys know, I actually read this text in the classical languages, and there it's known as Dawnbringers et tu Brute. And in this episode, we cover the lore of Dawnbringers' Reign of the Brute. The forces of destruction are not done yet. They've come to close out the era of the beast with a slam and a bam and like a kick and a stomp, and there's some smashing and all sorts of other destruction verbs as well. Let's see how many we can come up with throughout this episode. But before we do, how are you doing tonight, my fellow weird brutes? That's you guys.
I'm doing good. I'm also glad I went with my second choice instead of the first, because you took it.
Oh, was it really?
Really?
No way.
Yeah. I was going to do an Et tu Brutus joke.
That's fun.
But you shattered that upon the anvil.
Hey, another good destruction verb. All right, we're starting to tally. Listeners, please keep tabs for us. I think once in the history of this of the show have two people done a very similar intro at the same time. But this is a fun little glimpse into Motorhome's history. I can't remember what it is. I bet you Klaus knows when two people did the same intro.
Yes.
Get on it, Klaus.
What other Warhammer podcast are you going to get two people, ruthlessly destroying Shakespeare together for the same time?
Right.
Ruthlessly. No Ruths there, that's for sure.
I would say brutally, but...
Yeah, definitely true. All right, cool. Hey, guys, I'm glad we're here. We're back in the saddle again. The same crew. I think we're all going to be on the hook for any future Dawnbringer episodes as well. You guys have written this in blood. But we're here to talk about, like I said, the Dawnbringer's Reign of the Brute. No rhyming in that one. But before we do, as always, I'd love to ask you fine folks what you've been up to in the hobby. And so we're going to go in the same order as before. Hey, Paul, what you been doing?
Well, I painted up my Games Day exclusive Chaos Warlord. The running guy. Just kind of had sitting around and felt like working on him, so I've got him all done. And then at the moment, I'm actually working on the man, the legend, the myth himself, Trug. Thank you, DDW, for sending us for that. So I'm having a baller time in this Destruction Fest.
Baller. I love to hear it. Very cool. Are you, or does it give it too much away to say, are you doing anything weird to him, or are you just putting him together as is?
I had to do something weird to him because my Troggoth army is all converted. So if I didn't, he would have looked really weird with my Troggoth army. So
sure, it's the normal model is what's going to look weird. Sure, okay. All right, neat. Hey, Paven, what you been up to in the hobby, my dude?
I've been doing a little bit of painting here and there between summer plans. I finished up a Free Guild general and his friend. His models, those were great. Those were really fun to do, and now I'm working on some weird brutes that are part of the
nice,
so weird
collection of stuff.
I can tell. I feel like I'm gonna be left out when we come around the horn here. But hey, Will, what you been working on in the hobby?
Yeah, I've been working on my Dawnbringer Crusade of Hobgrats, and then decided to take a break to go a little hog wild because I have assembled the Mog Runta that we received from Games Workshop.
I'm happy for you, but yes, I am. I will be the odd man out. I predicted it.
But since I'm also going to use it for that army because it shares the same base as the Griffin, I put wings on it. So now I'll have a Hobgrat army when pigs fly.
Okay, geez Louise, we're done here. All right. It didn't occur to me until like very recently that there's a couple options in building out the big pig thing.
Yeah.
Are you? Which one are you doing?
So I'm doing the hero version, I guess, because the three ways to build it are you can have the hero on it, who isn't, he's just holding the chains, and that's the hero version. And then he's got two people on the side. There's the elite version, which is just a different orc is riding it, but there's still people on the side. And then the final one is there's no one on the side. So I put a Hobgrat and a Horns of Bushut model as my side riders to tie it into the rest of my army.
Okay, cool. And actually, going backwards, Paven, it didn't occur to me, but I think your box can be done two different ways too. Are you doing the weird guys or the other ones?
Yeah, the weird brutes.
Yeah, okay. Those are probably the cooler ones.
Those are fun, yeah.
Are they as fanatic-y as they seem, just like on the cover of the box? I don't know if you've gotten that far into them.
Yeah, I've assembled and I'm gotten some base coats down. I didn't think about that until you just mentioned it. They do have the spike ball on chain motif going, but they're, as far as like the fanatics, have a real wild posing, and they just seem more like big beefy orcs swinging chains around.
Nice. You must never break them. I heard that somewhere. Never break the chain. It's a song. What have I been working on? I did finally finish all my Corn Dudes assembly, but now I'm scared. Like now that I have to do some paint stuff, and I don't really want to, but I have to. Aaron, you have to do it. So that's what I've been working on most recently. I did also, just for my own sanity, start clipping more Warcry terrain out as well in preparation. It was a nice little break. I needed a break from all the trees and the leaves and stuff from the gnarlwood forest, because those things will kill your soul and also your body, I guess, as they eat you. So the corn things that I was assembling was a nice little break for that. Now I can dive back into just trees as far as the eye can sees. So that's what I've been working on. Not very interesting. Right? It's same stuff I usually am. And I think that's probably it. Does anybody else got anything else that they've been working on that they want to chat about?
Nope.
Cool. Really close to the story phase, almost there, but not quite. Because before we do, let's dive into some Mortal Realms plugs real quick, as if these listeners didn't already know all this stuff because they're listening to the show right now. But it's a good reminder. For example, you can find more episodes of this podcast and all our other shows at themortalrealms.com. Check it out. It's a good little website. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that because I made it, but still. You can email us your feedback at mortalrealms@gmail.com. There is no the in that email address. It's just mortalrealms@gmail.com. I've been begging you people to send us emails, and you never ever do. It's hard not to take that personally. So maybe today's the day you send an email to mortalrealms@gmail.com. Maybe today's the day where we break that streak. You can find our Patreon at patreon.com/themortalrealms to support the show. You can get early releases of the story phase and access semi-exclusive content like Pocket Realms, which is short story phases hosted by Davy and myself, or maybe a little Warhammer Bros. Sorry to put you on the spot, Paven, but like, where are we at with any additional episodes, my man?
You gotta talk to my brother, man. He's been not returning my call. So I don't know if I went too hard into the 40. No, we've been talking to him. He's had some just kind of a busy summer to deal with.
Okay, sure.
But I'm hoping to get back on the horse pretty soon.
Gotcha. You say, yeah, I got to talk to your brother. No, I don't want to talk to your brother. I want you to talk to your brother. Record it so I can listen to it. That's the ideal. But yeah, check out that Patreon, folks, if you are interested. But if you cannot or do not want to pitch in monetarily, which is totally fine, then head on over to your podcast service of choice and give us a review or like a star rating. I think those are the only two things you can do typically. I mean, if there was a third thing, I would have you do that too. But instead, maybe you could just go ahead and tell a friend about the Mortal Realms too, I suppose. Normally, I make a joke about like maybe an enemy or like a stranger or something like that. Today, let's just focus on friends. Today, your homework is tell a friend about the Mortal Realms. Let's not complicate things. Let's keep it pretty simple. So that's it. One final thought before we go any farther is we will be talking about the Dawnbringers Reign of the Brute, which is a book that GW actually provided to us such that we might read it and then review it, which is what we're going to do. So we'll say thank you to GW.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That's out of the way. Let's do a little bit of a story phase. Hey, Paul, would you take us there?
The story phase. In the story phase, we delve into the stories, characters, creatures, and environments of the 9 realms.
We sure do. Okay, so another one of these campaign books here. A couple things have happened prior to this book, and we've done episodes on them. So if folks really want to get caught up, obviously the recommendation is, hey, go back 2 episodes, listen to our Dawnbringers, Harbingers. Yes, I know it's pronounced Harbingers episode. And then honestly, probably go back and listen to the Cities of Sigmar Battletone episode, which ironically enough just released to the general public today. But you've got plenty of time to go listen to those episodes just to catch yourself up. However, if you're obstinate and you absolutely refuse to do so, and this is the only one you want to listen to, we'll do you a solid, even though you're not making it easy on yourself. And we'll try to catch you up real quick. And so I'm going to ask you guys, of the most recent events that have just happened, real quick, real fast, high level, what are the things that people have to know going into this book? Just think of it as a previously on the Mortal Realms. So in no particular order, there's no right or wrong answers. That's not true. There's lots of wrong answers. What do you think folks have to know going into this story?
So first thing is, in the Harbingers book, we have the prelude to these crusades that were going on. We see the situation in Akshi where they feel like they need to push forward. And we see this conspiracy happening inside the city of these 4 big people that may lead to major plot threads down the road. And then in Gairan, we have them dealing with the sickness and settlements that are sort of being destroyed because of the sickness, where they now kind of need to do the crusades to go back and retake some of those areas.
True. I like it. What else do you guys got?
I'm going to go with the third ed core rulebook. Actually is a great thing to read before this, because
surprise,
it really feels like this is what everything has been building up to, if that makes sense. Like, we've been like, oh, Dawnbringer Crusades, third ed rulebook, great, where are they? Well, they're here, this is where they are, right? Like, oh, Arrow the Beast, like, where are these like super cool big beasts that we're talking about? Oh no, we got Incarnine, we got Trug, like, we're getting it now. Like, I feel like this is where we enter into the storyline moving forward from the third ed core rulebook. Even though we've had some other threads and stuff going on, like, this really feels like it to me.
Sure. Paven, are there any items, plot developments that folks need to know about coming into this book?
Nah, I mean, yeah, you need to know what the Dawnbringer Crusades are. Like, be familiar with what that is. I guess the book defines it, but you don't really need to read book 1 to jump into book 2. Because it was all like, yeah, like, we're getting ready for the Crusades, but now the Crusades are happening. And so it kind of just starts at the beginning of the Crusade.
Sure, we're winding up. I agree with you. Need is maybe a strong word. Maybe one thing that could be fun for you to know going into this book is that a Fire Slayer contingent was fleeing from the wilds of Akshi, claiming that there was this giant beast that ruined their magma hold, and that's why they were coming to warn the city. And so, like, that little thread is kind of interesting, and obviously we know that it's going to end up paying off in this book. So, I mean, spoiler alert, we'll get to it, but that's a fun teaser in a previous book. I like when there's teasers that get paid off eventually.
Yeah, and I'm on record in that episode saying, well, they won't make a model of that, surely, so what's the point?
And I don't know why you called me Shirley, but was it only you? Because someone was saying in the Discord that, like, that was all of us. I don't know.
I know I said it,
okay,
for sure, and maybe everyone else agreed.
Sure, because we didn't want to hurt your feelings.
Yeah. I will say there was another plot point from the Cities of Sigmar book that may be relevant. I mentioned the first Dawnbringers book had that cool conspiracy that may tie into future stories. Mm-hmm. That's already taken care of by the time this book starts. And that happens in the Cities of Sigmar Battletome. Talia Vedrick goes in and she cleans up shop, and she sort of reforms the Hammerhall army and takes the lead as the first marshal. And the Cult of the Wheel kind of take charge as well, like on the religious side. And that is the Crusades that are launching. So it's like how you envision the Cities of Sigmar in book 1, there has been reforms between book 1 and book 2 that happen in a different battle tome.
Yeah, you can kind of see why it needed to go in that order, right? Why they needed to do book 1, then the battle tome. I mean, they didn't have to do anything. They're writing their story. Yeah. They can make up whatever they want. But, like, you can see why the story progressed in that way.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I would read beforehand is the short stories on Warhammer Community, because those are super sweet and they tie in directly.
Yeah, that is true. Those are, I love campaign books, but maybe one of the reasons I like campaign books is because they also release the short stories around them, so that, like, it really is a good context and it really flavors and fleshes out the stories that read in the books can be kind of encyclopedic or a little. I mean, there's high drama and stakes and action and stuff like that, but like maybe it lacks a little character. So like the short stories are where you're going to find the character for these events.
Yeah, the especially the Dawnbringer books and I was going to say Broken Realms books. It feels like someone is writing them after the fact, like some sort of scholar who was there is like trying to write everything down from their point of view, trying to be as objective as they can, as opposed to those short stories, which is like we are watching them as the bodiless entity.
Yeah. Okay. Any other things that folks need to know before going into this book?
I was just like, be prepared for like an awesome story, right? This one to me is a lot more like, I remember everything that's going on. Like this was totally engaging to me. Book one feels like at this point, like this is the scene setter, right? Book one is like, this is what you need to know. Like this is what you could know. That'd be kind of cool. Book two is like, all right, stuff's happening now. Like we're getting to the meat of what's going on, right? Let's get some smashing and bashing in.
Yeah, I remember we were saying like, oh, book one, this feels like a prologue. And we kind of hit the nail on the head because it was like not as eventful as the story that we are moving into now.
I'm glad you guys think so.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, let's stop beating around the bush. Let's get into the meat of it all, the interesting stuff. Let's dive into some plot. All right, so like the first book, this book is broken up into two like settings or arenas or what have you, in that like we are dealing with both Akshi and Gairan yet again. Get used to it, people. In the book, this one leads with the sort of the events as they unfold in Akshi. Who wants to start us off? So we know we're Dawnbringing. We're bringing that dawn. What's this crusade look like? Where do they go? Where are they headed? What's up? First come, first serve.
All right, I'll kick us off here. So the Akshian Crusade. So the Dawnbringers are here, and one of them is coming forth from a Hammerhall, Akshi. It is characterized by being heavily militarized and heavily industrialized, kind of like the city is. And so they bring a lot of firepower. They bring a lot of guns. They bring a lot of cannons, kind of aligning with the recent miniatures release that just happened for Cities of Sigmar. That's their jam. So that's kind of the look and feel. A lot of steam tanks, these kind of guys, and then a large kind of religious fanatic contingent. The people that are there that are important, I have on my list is First Marshal Talia Vedra, which is our new hero that rides the Manicore, otherwise known as the Lioness of the Parch, and she's in charge. She's like the general and the leader, and all the soldiers love her because she's she's one of the troops. But also folks of note, in addition to her, are Pontifex Zenestra, who is kind of a religious holy person and also a new miniature. I always think of like, do they have a miniature? Is also how much plot armor they have.
Yeah. Right.
I can't help it. And so Pontifex Zenestra is there, and then as well as he becomes more important later, but kind of as the second in command on the military side is Marshal Doridian Malchorn.
Oh, but he must have a model too, right? Then, like he's oh no,
he is represented by a few models.
Okay, good.
He's not a named miniature, which can bode ill or well for certain.
I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be okay.
It'll be good.
I have two questions for the group.
Yes.
One is, did I miss anybody? And two, was our boy Fiore supposed to be here?
I wish he would have been. I don't think you missed anyone.
No.
But I think Fiore, being the Fire Slayer, has already got their spotlight. I mean, I know we were predicting that maybe he wouldn't, like maybe he would be this through line, but I think this book is evidence that he will not be. And he served his purpose.
He had a great story, which is he's like the last surviving member of his magma hold.
You get to
He had to
continue this
live. He had to
story.
live for a reason.
We, the listeners, get to continue his story in our imaginations and on our tables at home.
Yeah. And, maybe it's better for him if he isn't a part of this, because one of these crusades is going to fail. So this might be how he survives.
Maybe it's a mark against this crusade that he's not there. So I remember in our predictions were like, well, if Fury's there, it has to succeed.
They're good.
It'd be cool.
But he just he slept in, and then the crusade already happened.
Yeah, well, now they have Talia Vedra there for the whole crusade, so they're probably good.
Yeah, so it's going to be fine.
It'll be great.
I will point out that Hammer Hall actually is all full of red shirts. I mean, I don't know how that bodes for their crusade. I'm just going to point that out. So
they changed their
Aren't
colors.
they orange now?
Or
they go between red and orange. They allow individual soldiers to kind of pick.
but it's one of them colors. Yeah,
I know the joke doesn't work if they wear orange, Baven. That's all I know.
Yeah.
I like the joke. It was a good one.
And then you didn't miss any people, but one thing you kind of mentioned like how they were going out on crusade, bringing a lot of artillery and like how it's representing the city. They also point out that it's kind of representing the realm, that the Axian side is very hot-headed, and they're like, yeah, let's just run out there, do this real quick. We'll beat anything that gets in our way, and we're just going to rush forward and take care of this. Like representing that Axian, like hot red fire blood that they have.
And it kind of comes to fruition like immediately, right? So they set out.
Mm-hmm.
They head out into the wilds. They're heading east towards like the adamantine chain. I don't know if that's specifically where they're going, but heading out in that direction. And like
Capillaria for sure.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. And one of the first adversaries they even come across was a bunch of, I think, Iron Jaws, which it was at this point where I was reading. I'm like, all right, well, that's quick. Like the new models are already going to get dropped right in. That's okay. Cool. Kudos to you guys. Turns out these are, these are nameless faces, not like Iron Jaws that don't matter.
Aaron, it's the Blood Punches clan.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't diminish the blood punches. Which I guess I didn't put two and two together, but like if we actually is known as a place that has a lot of corn presence, right? And so like presumably the Iron Jaws fight a lot of like corn followers, so like blood punches. Yeah, okay, I get that.
Yeah,
I will say they are named very closely or very to my own Iron Jaws force, which are the Blood Cuttas.
Okay.
Oh, perfect.
GW, you're on notice.
Sure. TM. I mean, some of us dream to have our stuff in official GW content, but not Payman. No, he draws a line.
Well, especially not like this.
Right.
Because they serve to be the punching bags, right? To really show to highlight how effective the new cities of Sigmar, Dawnbringers are. Sure, there's a little bit of back and forth initially. They form up their lines get smashed up, but then Talia comes rolling up on her bat-winged, but not really bat-winged manticore, and sort of comes to you to save the day.
Yeah, it was cool that she fights the mega boss, which was the leader of the Blood Punches. I think his name, I wrote it down here, Growclaw Daripa. And she rides up and the Manicore just like stings him a bunch of times, and then she cuts his head off and wins the day.
Yeah.
I was joking. The book does say bat-winged man.
Yeah.
Not to goof on, a mistake in the book, but like this is, what are we going to do? We have to fill the air somehow. So like, that's how I'm going to do it.
And it just is worse because the next page is a huge art piece of the Manticore with its big feathered wings.
Yeah, true. I mean, one of the coolest parts of the Manticore is its feathered wings. Like,
yeah,
maybe they have feathered bats. We don't know. It's the Mortal Realms. They could have anything.
Yeah,
it's true. They have twig bats.
Point.
I mean, come on.
Yeah,
that is true.
I'm going to be real embarrassed if like the next thing that comes out is a bat with like feather wings. Caught me.
Squidgens. They're coming.
Yeah, so it goes to show that shows the effectiveness of Talia, and with her at the helm, this crusade presumably cannot fail. So onward she leads to what happens next?
Next she gets a message from her Whisper Blade, Irikis Yalt, who is only referenced in this one sentence. Turns out leaving Hammerhall with your entire army, probably not the best idea. When you live in the land of corn, who immediately just started attacking the city. So she took herself, a good portion of the crusade and all of the Stormcast, and then turned around and went back home.
Guys, I don't know. Is this the right time to talk about this, or do we need to do it later? I'm not sure, but it needs to. I think it needs to be discussed. What? That? Excuse me? That's not. Is that the story we're telling? That seems poorly devised. Am I wrong? Did anybody else have an issue with this? Because Lord knows I did.
I know what they're doing with it, which is
do it better. Keep going.
Yeah, they want to set up this crusade as having struggles and being on the back foot, so that in the final book, guess who comes riding over the hills with a huge army of Stormcast to save the day?
Okay, good prediction. I hadn't thought about that. I just figured it needed to struggle. I didn't bring it to his logical conclusion.
Yeah, but they could have done it.
It made sense because a lot of the first book was talking about how ill-advised it would be to launch these Dawnbringer crusades right now with all the problems the cities were having. So there is a logic to immediately after they deplete their armies and send them out, they get attacked.
Yeah,
we have to send a fifth of the army back to defend the city. That makes within the
could have seen that.
Setting, it makes sense.
Well, and two people did see this.
Well,
in the Warcom story and even in this book, Callus and Toll are talking this is not a good idea. This is going to end poorly, but we're not going to tell her that because she just killed 4 people that disagreed with her. So, zip.
Do you think she didn't realize? Of all people, I would have thought she would have been the one who knew better. Do you think that she was oblivious to the threat to this city?
I mean, she killed 4 city leaders in one night. I don't think that she thinks twice about things all that often, right?
Yeah.
It even says in the book, right? So
how could she be any good at her job if she did not consider this even a little bit?
I mean, she just was elected by killing other people this year. I mean, come on, give her a chance to settle in.
Yeah, you can see the violence inherent in the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I also think this was more of a this wasn't a regular run-in-the-mill attack. This was a huge, a bigger than average bloodbound army, which they talk about how it's one of the seasons that Hammerhall deals with is foreign invasion.
Yeah,
and so it was a bigger than average one of those attacks and a Skaven infestation at the same time.
Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah,
okay. We weren't ready for we were ready for the yearly invasion, but not the, once every 2 decades level of attack.
And they follow up a little bit at the end of the book in a different section, so I'll talk about it then. But this whole attack on Hammerhall does pull on threads that have been hinted at in other books, which is neat.
Also true.
So the part that me was oh, come on, this seems not great was when in that Callus and Toll conversation where they're oh, they have us outnumbered. I see. It's Claw Scuttler hunting back in Excelsis. And I'm don't you mean getting destroyed every 3 years back in Excelsis? Did you have to reference an animal that doesn't exist yet in the Mortal Realms? Can't you just be remember when Kragnos came? And then remember when the zombie came, the zombie army came? And then remember when all the dead came? There was so much stuff going on in Excelsis. So I was oh, that's where I expect the more don't you remember what happened in Excelsis? Everything fell apart when we decided to go and do other things, right? So...
But that was a Tuesday for them. That's no big deal. It's more important, the Claw Scuttler hunting thing. Anyways, to hear you guys defend Talia leaving and then turning around and coming back is insane to me. But all right, fine.
I'm not defending. I'm saying that's what they're doing. I don't think it's great.
Yeah. Sure.
It's just, it's a big banner of she will return later.
It definitely looks bad. I'll say that. You go out on a crusade and then 1 week later you have to come back. Yeah, it looks super bad.
Sure. I mean, I've lasted Boy Scout camp longer than she did on crusade. Admittedly, one was a little bit more trying, but you know what? I don't know if they had Boy Scout camps for her to go to. Yeah, so there's that. That was a joke implying that the Boy Scout camp was worse than the crusade. Anyways,
No.
So okay, she leaves. She heads back to the city, leaving 2 very important characters that will persist or stand the test of time, leading this crusade out into action.
Pontifex Sinestra and the other one.
Yeah, they're really important guy.
I'll give it to you again. Marshall Deridian Malchorn. Don't forget the name.
I'm not going to store that. I'm not going to store that
chest.
in my brain. Yeah. There's more important things for me to remember, like my childhood friend's phone number. So yeah, they march out. As the crusade continues, I think our Marshal so-and-so guy, he starts to get a little perturbed because as they go along, he's finding that his troops are really getting more, caught up under the sway of Zenestra and her cult of the wheel. Like, she already has brought up a fair number of her own fanatics and, followers, but like her power seems to be growing in this crusade. And the Marshal is unhappy about that. But what's he going to do? Religious fanaticism, man.
Well, and like the positive thing for him is that, sure, they're the wheel cult and they've got all their stuff, but he's got all of these steam tanks that can carry all of this equipment, and they're motorized and they have these great massive wheels that carry them forward. Oh, wait, no, I'm reading the next page. They steal all of the wheels. The steam tank.
This is a gimmick that I hope you never stop doing, by the way. It's one of my favorite things.
I don't know. I love this bit because it's such a stupid, like, Warhammer type gag of, like, it's funny to read, but like if you were a person in this crusade and you saw all of these fanatics just taking the wheels off things and running away, would be so frustrating.
Just giggling.
But as the reader, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's like living in downtown Chicago and you're like, what am I supposed to do now? But in Warhammer, it's hilarious. Like, look at this steam tank. It's up on brakes. It's great.
I'm not going to have you cast aspersions on Chicago.
Yeah. Chicago.
Look at you defending Chicago now. All right. We were defending Talia. Now you're defending Chicago. We're even.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Same diff for sure. And so, yeah, the crusade carries on. It seems as Zenestra's growing in her power. And the Marshal is unstoked about this. We can keep talking about them, or we can switch the camera. I'll let you guys decide. More to say on the crusade before?
Yeah, I'll just say that there's kind of this tension that's set up between the like kind of secular military and the kind of religious zealotry in the crusade, and they're like the power was with First Marshal Talia, that she was definitely the leader, and now that she put her second in command in charge, now it's maybe balanced / moving more towards the pontifex. And I'll say on the wheel point, they do mention that even though they're not using wheels as much, they're making the same amount of time. Like what they lack in logistical technology, they make up for in just brute force marching. Mm-hmm. So they're making fine time going through the blood wastes or wherever they are.
Yeah. I found the Pontifex to be one of the more interesting books in the City of Sigmar. So I actually am pretty happy with this like expanded narrative of like exploring kind of how she operates and all this like details of how she would run the crusade. I think it was interesting. It's one of the things about this book that I think is really fascinating is that we're functionally having two competing armies from the same force, and not even from the same force, technically from the same city, right? Yeah. And just exploring the difference between the two. And it's really nice to be in a place in the Mortal Realms where we can do that. And it's not like, oh, but the names are different and they're painted different colors. Like there's an actual full, like to me, full lore background that makes sense for why these armies are kind of working the way they are. And so I really appreciated that. And it definitely felt like they were the armies from the cities that they said they were going to be from. And so I thought that was pretty cool. The big thing for me was I didn't expect Pontifex Zenestra and Talia to be in the same crusade. I thought that was a real interesting power dynamic to begin with.
Well, they're not anymore.
Right.
Problem solved.
Short-lived. Yeah.
Yeah, I had the same thought, like, oh, I'm surprised they're both here together. Oh, there it is. One left.
I get it now, yeah. What if it's the Gyran crusade that is in dire straits and who comes swooping in Battaglia? She's like, I left so-and-so in charge on the Ashy one. They're fine. I'll come save the Gyran one instead. No, it never comes to that. It's interesting that like not only does Zenestra win folks over to her cause just by like, I don't know, pure fanaticism, but like it seems as if she's got some sort of power to draw people to her. In that there's this little story, a little cutout blurb, or maybe it's its own page, I guess, where like some guy's up in arms about people stealing wheels and stuff. And he's like, whoa, that's dibs. I own that wheel. And she's like, you can't own a wheel. And then she like speaks a word and commands him to obey her. And he does. And she's like, I got a lot to teach you. And teach him. She does, presumably.
Yeah.
Powerful lady. I would have liked to have seen. It's too bad. I mean, there was already a big range. You can't make new stuff for everything. But I would have liked to see like what the new fanatics would have been, like new cultists of the wheel in the army.
Yeah.
I know we've got the flagellates, but like I wanted to see what the new version would be, and maybe we will get those one day. Any other Crusade stuff before we switch the camera real quick to greener pastures? I don't know.
Yeah, no, just the last thing is like after defeating that first group of Iron Jaws, they're just marching their way to the settlement of Truce Break, where they're going to fill up on all the supplies they need to continue on to a successful crusade.
We hope. Fingers crossed, successful crusade. But fortunately, Truce Break is a very safe bastion out in the wilderness, and there's nothing could possibly go wrong. Hey, let's go switch over to another perspective, and that is that of our old friend Braggett. Remember, you guys remember Braggett from the first book? I'm sure you guys do.
How could we forget?
Yeah, big old skull on his head. He was claiming up and down that he had woken some giant. Did he call it a trog back then?
He did call it a Troggoth with a realm gate on its back. Well, he said is the largest Troggoth he had ever seen.
Sure.
And then the Fire Slayers had said there's a massive Troggoth with a realm gate on its back.
Okay. All right. Well, surprise. Both of those are true. And that's where we are introduced into Trug, the Trog King, who apparently was sleeping. I'll just keep going, I guess. So he was sleeping in Gyran, which this is confusing to me because there's a crusade which is in Gyran, but Braggett wakes Trug up in Gyran, but then proceeds to kite him through a realm gate to Akshi. So he went from one to the other. We're going all over the place here. And he knows that wherever he leads him, destruction shall follow. And so that's what he does. What did you guys learn about Trug? What stood out to you? Talk to me about him.
Yeah, like you said, he'd been sleeping for a long time. He fell asleep in the age of myth and then woke up now in the era of the beast. And in that time, I thought what the interesting thing is like entire like civilizations were built around him, and they just saw him as a big rock, and just they built things on him. Specifically, they don't say it's a realm gate, and it's a little small to be a realm gate, but they built a cool little altar gate looking thing that can harness the power of all the realms, which is very cool.
And it has all 8 realms carved into it, but it's totally not a realm gate. I swear, totally not a realm gate.
Yeah, it'd be cool to gaze into the people that made this thing, but they're not around, and the only person who encounters it is Trug, and he doesn't care.
No.
So I don't think it's ever going to specify.
Trug basically is just like, it's a migraine day, like every day. It's the main part of his character is just like, he's got a massive splitting headache, and he just kind of wants to get rid of his headache. He just wants some aspirin, really. But the book kind of talks about how this realm gate thing is basically just driving him a little crazy. And he, like Aaron said, he got kited through to the realm of Akshi by this Braggett Big Talker. And Paven, I would love to hear your rendition of what happened when Trug caught up to Braggett and his boys, and what moved forward from there.
But you like the battle between Trug and the goblins?
Yes.
He just like eats them all.
Yeah. Battle's a strong word.
Yeah, right. I wouldn't call it that. Actually, you get you find out about that battle between him and the Grots, not in this book, but rather the short story that just came out just a couple days ago, right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So like Braggett finds, this is not in this book, guys, so spoiler for whatever the short story, but like he finds the dude. Braggett finds Trug, starts yelling in his ear, wakes him up, starts to immediately regret his decision as the Trog wakes up, starts grabbing people, stuffing them in his mouth, and so he chases them through these tunnels, all the while his whole goblin band getting smashed and smooshed, and like he picks up a squig and pinches it between his fingers and it pops. But he's like, you know what, I can work with this, and so then that is the start of the kiting through the
And you know what? Shout out to Braggett for being the only one to make it into book 2.
That's true.
Yeah, who knows? My man.
Yeah.
So he gets kited through, and because of the weird realm thingy on his back, he doesn't know that he can do this, but Trug can see like the ley lines of the astro matrix, and so he sees all these shiny lights, and they give him a big headache. So he needs to just go make the lights turn off. Is like his whole motivation. And as he's stomping through, all these other Troggoth stuff following him. So we have this character who, was put to sleep inside of a mountain in the Age of Myth, slept through until Alariel's Rite of Life woke him up. He wakes up, he sees the lights of civilization, stomps to go destroy it, and is followed by the forces of destruction as a leader who doesn't actually give commands. It's the first of the kind of this character that we've ever seen since Kragnos.
It took me a second, but I got there with you. I was with you. Was it Alariel that woke him up, or was it Braggett yelling in his ear, or was it both, or neither?
So, Alariel was like the alarm clock that was like kind of getting him out of REM sleep, but it was Braggett that like poked him to get that final amount.
Yeah, Braggett was the snooze, being like, it's time to get up. You got to get to work.
Mom yelling from downstairs.
Yeah, exactly.
The alarm clock.
I think it's more of the cat swiping your face to give it breakfast.
That's so true. Lock mine in the basement because of that. Anyways, so he follows Braggett through actually, and then like this sort of catches us up to what we had learned before, because it doesn't, in this book, it talks about how he hit those 2 magma holes, which is where Fury was before, right? So.
Oh, okay. So technically, Fury, our boy, was his magma hold was destroyed by Skaven.
Yep.
It was his other group, those other group of fire slavers that were complaining about the Troggoths.
Sure. Good correction. That's a good point. Let's not forget about Skaven. But at any rate, these are the magma holes that we had known about previously, right? That he had sort of trashed through. And on his way to any shining light on the astro matrix that he could turn out, he's basically a grumpy father. Those damn kids left the lights on, and he's got to go over and flip those switches. Did they have stock in the electric company? I don't know. Any other Trug or destruction based thoughts before we switch the camera back again?
No, just that I mentioned that he had Troggoths following him, but also I'm pretty sure there's a fair number of the other Gloomspike Gits just following in tow as well.
Mm-hmm. I like Trug specifically because he doesn't necessarily have what they did is they took something that was, Troggoths aren't really intelligent. They just kind of wander into random places and then stuff happens, right? And they managed to give him intelligence by making him dumber but he can see these lights, right? Like he still is just like, I don't actually want to go do anything. I'd rather just be sleeping right now. But they've made him a threat because of this whole he can see the ley lines thing. So I thought that was a cool way of making a character that didn't break the lore of Troggoths that can actually be a threat. So I thought that was fun.
Like he feels like a true force of destruction, or like he's closer to like a hurricane than like a thinking being. Mm-hmm. He's just destroying these ley lines by route, and everybody else is just coming along, and he's just bringing the armies with them in a kind of like almost a mathematical way, and that he's much more. I think we're probably going to do the I don't know, destruction monster power rankings later, but he's like more, he's better than Kragnos because like he doesn't, you can't trick him because he just does one thing in a straight line.
Sure.
Yeah, and like even though like the outcome is the same, they both will approach a city and just completely obliterate it with their fists. I do love the difference in that Kragnos is the end of empires. He's seeking out civilization. Trug is he's literally tearing apart the Astro Matrix itself. He is smashing the things that holds the realms together, and not out of any like malevolence. It's just bothering him, so it has to go.
Which is almost a little bit more identifiable, at least for me. In that, like, yes, he's been wronged in some way. Not even, he doesn't even think about that. Like, it's an annoyance, or it is his life is worse because of these ley lines, and he's going to do something about it. Whereas Kragnos is almost as if, although he has an ethos, it's one that I can't put myself in his shoes or his hoofs or whatever you want to call it, where he's like just anti-civilization. I like Trug better, but then again, I'm on record for not really liking Kragnos at all. But it's neither here nor there.
Yeah, this podcast has a long history of trash talking Kragnos.
I love what he could be, but not where he's at right now.
Cool model. So, I dig the dude.
Kragnos, we're not mad. We're just disappointed.
Right. That's exactly what it is.
and the thing is, like, because he sees magic and wants to kill it, like, he's basically just like a massive Cygor. So he's a better Beast of Chaos character than Kragnos is too, even though Kragnos is Centaur. Right? Like,
yeah. Well, and I love because he can see magic, but he doesn't understand or really care that he can see magic. If any character like Teclis or just like any wizard knew that he had this power and they didn't, they would get so mad and jealous.
Yeah.
Like that he's not even appreciating this cool thing he can do.
Yeah. And I love the fact that like the ways that he actually like switches direction and like things happen is because he's just like running the icons into the roof or like trying to scratch his back. So it's literally just like random flailing that causes different pains. And therefore, like this city got destroyed because I had an itch here. And therefore I scratched it against this cave wall. And now the rune of Shyish is like taken over. So I guess I'm going to go destroy your city. Right. It's fun.
I guess while we're still on the topic of Trug, after destroying a bunch of magma holes, he also faces off against a Khorne army as well on his rampage. And might as well just bring it up now. And that was kind of fun. These campaign books, I think, really shine when they put armies that you don't see fight against each other. Like you see Stormcast fight everything, right? I don't need to see every version of a fight between Stormcast and every possible enemy out there for the most part has already existed, and we've read that. And there's a wide variations of different matchups that you see pretty regularly. But I don't think I've seen too many Gloomspite gets or Trogs, I guess, against Khorne. So hey, this is a new one for me. At one point, so Trog's got the like antlers on his head, and at one point, like he gores and like impales a Korgorath on it. I'm like, all right, cool. That's a fun image that I didn't know I wanted to think of in my head, and now it's locked in there. So I don't know.
Yeah. No, I also enjoyed it. I was trying to craft a joke of you could say Trug was the real Blood Puncher.
Yeah, I would say that. Maybe we'll switch back to the humans unless you guys got other Trug thoughts. All right, here we go. All right, so Crusade rolls up on truce break. They're excited. They think, all right, now we've got this respite. We've been battling our way across Akshi. We can finally rest. Here's a safe locale. And they come walking through the doors, and it seems as if all the defenders are looking east with a tremble. They're terrified because word has reached them that some massive force is on its way, and they're in some deep trouble.
Yeah, but the Collegiate Arcane Advisors told them it's not worth worrying about because the idea of a Troggoth understanding magic is ludicrous. He says it's akin to a Gargant taking an interest in Holy Scripture, and we're never going to see a priest Gargant show up later in the story.
I had forgotten about that until you just mentioned it. Do you people have any idea where you live? The fact that you would ever utter those words is insane to me.
But also, there was already a priest Gargant in Warhammer because it was at Glimsforge. His bones were buried underneath the walls of the city. Yep. That was one of the reasons why the Night Hunt couldn't get through.
Yeah, there are existing Gargants who worship Sigmar and help build the cities.
Yep.
So why would they say that? It'd be like saying that's as ludicrous as like elves and Dwarden living in a city together, as there's just like battalions of them behind them.
Yeah, they just all turn and give you a quizzical look. But yeah, the realms are infinite and vast and varied, and every possible thing that could exist out there probably exists. And for them to be like, nah, that could never happen. Again, maybe it's just because we're an audience and we have it's a certain type of irony, dramatic irony. I can't remember the types.
Yeah,
but,
dramatic irony.
Yeah, still low. But yeah, so they're afeared that that Trug is a coming, even though they don't know his name, and he's on his way. So the question is, what do we do about it? So what do they decide to do about it?
So Pontifex Zenestra is the only person who like takes this warning as something to actually be concerned about, and she kind of wants to hole up. But Marshal Malcorn, with his hot Axiom blood, thinks, oh, Trogos, this will be an easy kill. We can show off our cool new artillery, our cool new gun lines, our cool new Cavalier models. Because they're all new models, we're going to do great. Because they always let the new models win, right?
The new hotness, yeah.
And so he decides to meet them out in the field.
Plus, he thinks this is an opportunity for him to wrangle back some control, right? Like he's going to show everybody what's what. He's not going to, hide behind the walls. He's going to, through valor, win back the hearts and minds of his troops. And so he rides out with all the, like we said, the new troops to face Trog head on and bring his firepower to bear. How's that go?
Well, he has a good idea in that he wants to use go to an advantage, a place where he has advantage. So they have long range guns. They want like a really long, flat battlefield. And so he sets up their all of their forces on Mander's Crest, which is kind of maybe a little bit of a plateau in front of a large field, and it's actually protected on 3 sides by flame geysers or lava geysers. So it's a really defendable position, and they put the Castellite formation on that crest, so all the cannons and all the fusiliers. And they just kind of wait for the huge Goblin and Trog army just to kind of run into them. And then on top of all that, we have 2 of our favorite things that aren't models yet, but will be someday, hopefully. We have 2 cog forts rolling into position.
Yeah.
And they're named cog forts. St. Markov and the Lion's Pride are also there. So you have a pretty formidable force. And if I can keep going,
please
do.
It goes well. Like that's what they like. The goblins just and Trogs just kind of like stupidly run into them and they just blast them away. And things are going so well. Our boy Malchorn is hungry to get in the action, and so he leads his cavaliers in a charge and kind of demolishes the center of the goblin line charging in. But he leaves at just about the wrong time because there's a flanking maneuver of Boingrat Bounders coming up.
I'm hearing a theme, by the way. This is I'm hearing a recurrent charging out and then leaving your stuff defenseless behind you. Yeah.
I think the correct term is to sally forth to Mander's Crest, which I thought was a really clever pun. Sally, Mander, Crest, get it?
Oh.
That can't possibly be intentional. Yeah, no, I got it, but there's no way that's intentional. Anyways, keep going.
Okay, so Loon Boss, Gitgrit the Burner, and his Boingot Browners take this opportunity to bounce over the lava geysers using their squigs. And once they're back there, they just wreck like all the cannons and the artillery crew, and they're just a bunch of squig-filled violence. And then they fall into the backs of the Fusiliers and the steel helms and stuff, and kind of wreck up the lines before the Cavaliers can turn around and clear them out. And then maybe it would have still been okay, but then Trog shows up, and he is a real tough SOB. Son of a behemoth.
Son of a behemoth? Yeah, exactly.
And he, I think, 1v1s one of the cogforts. I think
Yep.
the Lion's Pride. He just like bashes it down, and then the battle is lost. And Malchorn tries to signal the retreat, and some folks get out of there. But the other cogfort gets all webbed up by Ragnarok spiders because that's part of it. And a few defenders, including the general, make it back to truce break. And it's a rough one. Big L for the Dawnbringer Crusade, and another big win for Trug.
Yeah.
He just can't lose.
And a little on the nose that the Lion's Pride, after the Lion of the Parch, Talia Vedra, left, her pride was destroyed, and also the guy she left in charge.
Yeah, because it says like when even though he survives and gets back to truce break, he's broken. Pontifex Sinestra is now in charge.
Yeah, he's lost any sort of power or influence, or other words like that. He's proven that he is maybe not fit at this point. So now the question is, now what do they do? Right, they make it back through the gates of truce break. The Grots are hot on their heels. Things it's looking dire, and I believe it's. Do they come to the conclusion right away that the city or the outpost can't be saved? Like, it's a matter of, right, well, I think we need to boogie on out of here, right?
Yeah, so I think that's the strategy, is like hold for as long as you can and take the crusade. And I imagine like whatever citizens are left in truce break and make a run for it. And Sinestra, one of the things she does is she kind of gives our Marshal Malchorn a little of his groove back, and like, okay, here is your moment of redemption. Hold the gate. This is how you make up for your folly. And he dusts himself up, and I think he leads a pretty good defense, and they hold for a while. And I think he switches miniatures at this point, or before he was a cavalier, but now he's double pistol Fury Guild General.
Yeah, my man.
And he holds the line, and they hold it for a while, but then and I think this is the only time they mentioned the Bad Moon actually shows up.
Yeah,
starts crafting up, because it's a classic Gloomstite Gitz army. And Trug shows up, smashes through the gates. You can't stop him. But Malchorn, as a final act of defiance, I don't know, they had a big pile of powder kegs, and he blows himself and probably half the city and Trug up as a final way of slowing them down.
Yeah.
Doesn't stop the troll.
God, no.
But it pisses
very
him off.
things do. Yeah.
That is kind of a theme of the regenerating thing isn't stopped by fire. And the lava, like everything in the realm of fire is not stopped by fire, but everybody in the realm of fire thinks that fire will stop everybody else.
Fight fire with fire. You should fight everything with fire.
Right. Yeah, there's a great piece of art that's got Trug just a flame bearing down on the Cities of Sigmar forces, and it's just so good.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Cool as heck.
Yeah, the other fun thing is we see, like, I made the joke of like, oh, the new models always win. Trug is newer than the rest of the Cities of Sigmar models, so we get to see just like him crushing Alchemy Warforgers, like Trug picking up steel helms, and just, it's so funny because you think, oh, the brand new order book is going to have these great moments, and it's just anytime they call out one of the new models, it's because they're getting torn apart by Trug and the Gloomspite.
You alluded to the hierarchy. The newest model wins.
And newest model wins.
Is the newest one. They had to sprinkle in a few fights before this fight so that they give some cities, they give the cities a couple wins just to prove like that they're capable, to then show how strong Trug is. Because if even he can beat the new guys, it's turtles all the way down. Right on. So Trug survives this explosion, and a chunk of his horde does as well. And although the Cities of Sigmar, Sinestra at the lead, leading the refugees and survivors and the remnants of the crusade out of the city, but they are pursued by the Grots. What do they catch them? What comes next?
Well, so they're trying to make a break for the Ember Passes, which are kind of these narrow canyons, which they can escape down and provide some sort of cover, so they're not just like wide in the open, and they're trying to get there, but nets are being thrown on them, like people are being captured, like they're not actually escaping. I think the goblins and the trolls are faster.
Yeah.
And then thankfully though, and Trug shows up as well, and he's on fire and pissed off, and he's also chasing.
Mm-hmm.
But the forces of destructions are not the only one with a special character with a miniature. So Zenestra calls down her own super move, which is, my understanding is, it's a giant. It starts out as like 5 or 8 beams of light are coming off of her as her at the center. And then the ends of the beams connect, and you know what it is, a giant wheel, because she is the high priest of the wheel cult, and it's like a white flame wheel, and then it comes down and it starts like dissolving trolls or troggoths and goblins, and it even hits Trug, knocks his butt down, and kind of like provides cover for everybody to flee. And finally, this giant flaming wheel like makes contact with like the sides of the canyon, and it like collapses the canyon behind them. So they're able to, so the crusade is able to survive and escape. And one other thing that happens is she sends like a whole vanguard of flagellants, of those zealots down to like charge into the goblins after they're stunned by the giant wheel, and those also buy further time for the crusade to escape.
I love your super move. I'm glad we're still calling them that. So yes, that is correct. She does her ultimate in her fighting game. The wheel also heals her allies too, so it really does everything. There's nothing it doesn't do, frankly. And both our named heroes live to fight another day, because Trug comes to. He's particularly angry. His headache has not abated. He doesn't see his enemies anymore, but like he's still very angry. So I don't know what comes next for him. Either now he's loose on the world, or maybe he comes back in the Dawnbringers books. But if what's his name, Fiore is any indication, maybe that's the last we see of Trug anytime.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about the ending here of the stories that's been laid out?
It feels like we're going the wrong way as far as number of cities that we are establishing.
Right.
Especially considering what comes next, right?
Right.
Truce Break's been on the map for a while, but not anymore. Gone.
Yeah, it's been on the map. It gets specifically called out in the Cities of Sigmar. The newest battle tome is like, and there's the new city of Trucebreak that may expand into its own metropolis someday.
Whoa.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in the 3rd edition book, apparently.
Yep.
I can tell because I looked that up on the Lexicanum. Thank you, Sage Mud. All right, cool. Do you guys want to stop there and head on over to Gyran, or you guys got further Akshi thoughts?
It's not looking good over here in Akshi.
No.
Let's see how that Gyranite Crusade's doing.
Yeah.
I'm sure much better, right? I'm sure it's going to go way better.
No worse.
Yeah, Trug was standing in the way of the Gyranite Crusade, but now he's over doing this flame stuff. So like they should be totally fine. Like the big guy,
great.
Right? He was the alpha predator there, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. So we kind of described the ethos, the mentality of the Akshian Dawners, like, and how they were going to go about doing their crusade. Does the Gyran Crusade, does it look any different than the Akshian one?
Yes, I think it looks pretty more life magic focused. They're continuing this theme of talking about these jade priests and this life magic being more helping to run everything going on, as opposed to what they talked about with Hammerhall Akshi. They're like, oh, we're building armor and we're building steam tanks. And Hammerhall Gira, they're like, oh, we're growing crops to make sure you have enough food to eat, right? Like it's a little bit more considered, not a little bit more. It's a lot more considered. Is a lot more intentional in preparation. And they also seem to be focusing a lot more on the Whittler Corps and on other aspects of the Cities of Sigmar force that are not particularly represented in Hammerhall Akshi forces so far.
Yeah. And they spend a lot of time talking about the amount of people they can bring to bear. So, like, they could launch an entire crusade and then still keep people behind to defend the city, which is a pretty smart idea.
Impossible.
And they touched on this in the previous book of, like, all of the settlements around Hammerhall Gyra basically had to flee because of Nurgle and the Flesh Eater courts. So we also kind of, it's not just, oh, and they have infinite people. We know where these people are coming from. And they're the same people that want to go back out there to reclaim their lands. And then another huge thing that separates them is they actually have Stormcast with them. Specifically, it's the Hallowed Knights, but it is the Redeemed, led by Knight Venator Tornus.
Awesome.
I love that they're still talking about this guy, and he's probably due for a model too. And actually, despite the jokes that we were making previously, like, here's a named dude who does not have a model that, like, he keeps coming back, right? So he I don't know that he's ever died, even that I mean, since he's been.
I mean, he's become a Stormcast.
Yeah, no, I mean, since then though, I guess you can't die, right? That's the whole point. But still, like, there are stories where Stormcast don't make it. But I think he keeps trucking along. So more Tornus, please.
Yeah. For listeners that may not know, like, Tornus was this bit character almost way back in the beginning of AOS.
Is he Tor Glug?
Yeah, he was Torglug, and then he became Tornus in a Black Library novel, I think. And then he kind of picked up steam and just started going forward, and now he's in charge of, like, functionally, I know this doesn't actually work with the way Stormcast are organized, but he's functionally in charge of his own chamber of Stormcast that are all also redeemed, right? So basically, we've got these reformed criminals going out and, like, really dealing out some rough justice here. So super awesome to see him again and to see him, like, super engaged with the narrative.
Yeah, he's there, and I think the leader of the crusade is named as Marshal Asilla Thorian.
Yep.
Who's supposed to be known for being, like, very pragmatic and also very, like, in touch with the wilds of Gyran. Although we'll say a mark against this crusade, no named character, like no characters with models.
Yeah.
If only there was a named Hallowed Knight model that could appear at some point in the story. I feel like it would really flesh it out.
We'll see if there is, and we'll see if that helps.
Are there named? Yeah. Also, I think Tornus becomes Tornus in a campaign book. I don't know if he gets turned in a Black Library.
I think it's I think it's a I don't know. I don't know. I don't know when the smiting actually happens.
I want to say it was in God Beast. I looked it up because I couldn't remember, and this according to Lexicanum. But at any rate, it's as if anybody was going to ever write us in a correction. Like, they would even, like, dream of it.
I feel like they'd
have to email us at
all the time, right? Like, on our Discord.
True. So this crusade is going north, right? And they're going to go through some narrow passageway into, Nurgle held land, so that the neck. It's Nurgle held land so that they can reestablish, outposts in a city and blah blah blah, yada yada yada. So they set off. What are some of their initial adversaries?
Man, just the weather.
So they have like the Axian Crusade, they have, like, a first kind of starter battle. And this takes place in the Moshhorn Fens, and it's against Nurgle, as is often the case in Gyran, as you're dealing with Nurgle. And it's a gross swamp, and it's wet because of the rain battle is still ongoing. And the Dawners have to face off against, a bunch of Maggotkin, the Blight Kings, the guys that ride the bugs, and there's even a great unclean one named Thropalax, who is real gross, is great on too. And apparently they shoot it with a bunch of cannons, and it just gets absorbed into its flesh. But Tornus comes through as our most famous guy. and shoots the great unclean one through the armpit into its gross heart, and he kind of shrivels up like an apple. And then they win the battle.
And what is this? Wasn't his heart like under his arm or something stupid? Like,
well, I think he went through the armpit.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I just took it as like his heart was under his armpit. I hear wearing your heart on your sleeve, but this is ridiculous. But okay, still. But all right, mission accomplished. Nurgle defeated. Smooth sailing from here on out.
Feeling good. Yeah.
Interesting is that we have a named Nurgle character from the first book who was not featured in this battle, because this is they kill the first obstacle in front of them and they move on, so they're not going to put him there.
Yeah, if Rodigus was here, this crusade would be over.
Right.
Because he's got a name, right? And a model. I mean, they all have names. So they carry on. I think it's around this time where they decide that like, oh, we should probably stop at Fort Gardas. Like, oof, we need to. It's like, but it's presumably on their way. And they already have a Hollow Knight contingent with them. Maybe Gardas is in. Maybe they can check in with them, see what's what. So I believe they're like going to try to head in that direction.
Yeah, and they definitely want to go through the grasslands because they don't want to have to deal with the trees and getting slowed down in that wooded area. Because that's where the Nurgle and the Pestilence tend to live, and marching on open ground is a lot easier.
Yeah, correct.
Especially when it's all soggy and messy, because of all the rain. You don't want to be in the woods.
Exactly.
And also that particular forest is called the Grimbark, which is a dumb name.
But you don't want to be in it.
Oh, yeah, come on. It's great fun. Not the Grimdark, the Grimbark.
Yeah, no, I got it.
It's so AOS.
Yeah, and it's known for being not a good forest to go through.
Some forests, totally great. Awesome, in fact. But this forest, no good. No bueno. So they're like, all right, well, we have our heading. We know where we're headed. Onwards. Let's go. Wait, hold up. What's that sound? They hear the thunder of... that was more like a hoof beat. That doesn't count. But
you literally have a thunder sound effect?
And they do have hooves.
And they do, I suppose, hooves. But do they like gallop like this, though?
That's a good question.
The audience should have asked us that question, and then we could answer it. But they hear a thunder of hooves bearing down on them, and it's, oh no, a bunch of orcs on pigs. I hope listeners, you weren't tired of Iron Jaws, because Iron Jaws are back, but these are different Iron Jaws, better Iron Jaws, new Iron Jaws. What do we got?
It's also another example of one of the main fights of one of these crusades came from a different realm. They just wandered through a realm gate in Gur, and then found themselves in front of the crusade and like, oh, let's crump those guys.
Wherever the riders need the bad guys to be, that's where they shall be.
Well, they had been running around for a while in Gairan until they found the Dawnbringer crusade. They were getting restless, and they had actually ditched half of their Wa. Because the pig orcs were too, well, one, they run too fast, and they were getting too frustrated by not finding a good enough battle. And they run headfirst into our Dawnbringer crusade.
So how's it go? I mean, it's two new, I guess, armies, or groups made up of new models. So like, it's an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. How does it shake out?
So this force is led by Tusk Boss Kazog Hornsplitter. And initially they just smashed through the Dawnbringers. Like they form up into a shield wall, but it wasn't enough. These pigs are too big, and they just smashed through. So it's looking really bad. But then they come up with a new tactic, which is just like kind of a Matador style move, where they just kind of get out of the way, and then the pigs kind of keep going. And then Tornus comes in with his prosecutor brethren. So those are the Stormcast with wings, and they kind of just lead the pigs away. And that's it. That's the end of the battle.
You did. It was cool. It's like the orcs couldn't like direct their pigs. It sounded, maybe I'm adding more than what was in the book, but it seemed like they couldn't steer their pigs away from the flying prosecutors, and so they just like ended up chasing them, even though they didn't necessarily want to. But I bet deep down they did.
They very much like, that's exactly like how it's covered. Like, he even says like Hornsplitter is like yelling. He's like, no, they're going that way. Come on, they're going that way. But he can't do anything about it. and he just has to watch the Dawnbringers just kind of walk away.
I have to say that like this book did a really good job of making battles that I could see in my head.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really hard for me to like envision what they're writing on the page in my mind's eye. But for this one, it was super like I was like, oh, I get this. Like it was for the Action Crusade as well. I was like, oh, I understand how this battle is working. I understand how this is laid out. So I thought I really appreciated that. And this one also, I was like, oh, I get it. It's basically this running battle and they're chasing him down. So I thought that was cool and a lot more interesting than two forces fight up, one force leaves. Right?
Our Dawnbringers, they see the pigs go riding off and chasing prosecutors. They have a moment where they have to decide what they're going to do next. Then, right? Like, so do they stay out in this open ground where they wanted to be, but also where they could get charged by pigs at any moment, or do they have to turn and head into the woods, the very place they did not want to go, but perhaps is the lesser of two evils? What do they decide? Where do they go?
They go lesser of two evils, it's interesting because it makes a point at the beginning of this crusade to say like, oh, she listens to her advisors, listens to her scouts. She's very in tune with the area. But then it's like, when talking about the Grimbark, she's like, well, hopefully those are all just fairy tales that I've heard growing up. Like, it can't be that bad, right?
Who are these people? Oh,
it's like God. The moment she lapses and like, yeah, you know what? Let's not trust the scouts. They're exaggerating.
Well, she didn't really have much of a choice. She just had to get away from the open field. Because the pigs were going to come back.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I'm fine that she did it. I'm not fine with her being like, those are probably fairy tales. Like, I'm okay that she had to do it. I'm not okay with why she chose. Well, no, I guess even the why is fine. But like that little line, this book seems to me full of people who everyone should know better. Like, it's so like on its face. Anyways, I'm not going to get mad at these fictional characters whose plot have been written for them so that they can deliver, a storyline. But still, be better. I should lead a crusade. You know what? All right, I'll do it.
Are you going to be have a model, or are you just going to be a name?
Oh, I better have a model, or I'm not going to do it. Anyways, so they decided to take to the trees, man. But we can pause there. I'll ask, do you have more crusade thoughts, or should we switch the camera?
No, they really don't focus on this crusade as much, and like any of the interpersonal stuff, as much as they did with the Action Crusade, because there are more points of view and more like armies and groups that are kind of taking place. So it shifts the focus very quickly to some of the other threats.
Sure. If we're going to shift focus, allow me to ask a question. Hey, listeners, we'll do this one quick. We're in the middle of it. So, yada, yada, yada. You want to ask a question? Here's what you do. You got to hang out in the Discord server all the time. It's www.themoralrealms.com/Discord. You hang out there. I ask if you have any questions. You ask me a question. It gets on the show. Quick and easy. Done and done. Just like our friend and patron of the show, Mealhern, they ask, what's King Broad up to? King Broad, where's this coming from? Man, we're talking about Iron Jaws. We're talking about Trugs. We're talking about Dawnbringers. What makes you think that King Broad has anything to do with... Oh, actually, he's got a whole page right here. Oh, what do you know? King Broad is up to some stuff. He's stomping around in Guyran. What's the big boy doing these days?
He is avenging the death of Behemoth. Some backstory that they provide in the book for those who haven't read like the new Sons of Behemoth battle tome is King Broad is a massive Mega Gargant, king of the Mega Gargants, and he worked with the Stormcast to try to prevent chaos from corrupting Behemoth himself. And then he just kind of watched as the Stormcast murked him and killed him in front of him. And he saw himself as... No, he worships Behemoth. He's the father of all Gargants. He's a god beast. He's very much a religious figure. So here we have a Mega Gargant who actually understands religious scripture, which is as ridiculous as a Tragoth who understands magic. And so he's just in Guyran, smashing settlements, smashing cities, and watching the refugees head towards Fort Gardas. And he's just allowing it to happen because then they're all going to be in one spot for him to smash later on.
True. Did he have a particular vendetta against Fort Gardas specifically?
He had a particular vendetta against the Hallowed Knights. I believe.
Oh, are they the ones who killed Behemoth?
That was my
They were there.
understanding. The way I read it, yes.
No, they weren't. They weren't the ones, but they were there.
Yeah, it was the Celestin Prime who did it.
Okay.
But he was wearing wasn't he wearing Hallowed Knight colored armor at that point?
Yeah.
Because that's one of his things, right?
Yeah, he changes his armor to whoever he's fighting alongside at the time, or whoever he's fighting alongside sees him in the color of their armor. I'm not sure of the specifics.
It's hard to know.
Maybe I'm digging too deep here.
Sure.
But they were there. They were fighting alongside King Broad when Behemoth died by Stormcast.
I was
Gotcha.
there the day Behemoth died. That's what King Broad says.
He's got Fort Gardus in his sights. He's letting the humans run. He's tramping around Guyran, all around Fort Gardus. People are fleeing to Fort Gardus. He's going to let everybody go there so that, like you just said, they're all in one place so that he'd be nice and squishy when he steps on it. These walls are our sacred shield, apparently.
Yeah. I was just going to say, and Fort Gardus is named after a great Stormcast hero. Very important place. So obviously, only Gardus Steelsoul himself can be leading the defense, and that is our named Hallowed Knight model. He's one of the few Stormcast heroes who has both his own model and his own unique rules, instead of just saying, "Oh yeah, use this as a Night Quester."
Sure. Does Vandus?
If you don't know who he is, he's the Superman landing pose.
Yeah, with the cool hammer cloak. I guess a lot of them have the hammer cloak. Does Vandus have his own rules too?
I think he did.
Yeah.
Actually, I was wrong. There's a lot of them that have their own rules,
Bastion,
but
Carthalos probably. Has.
But there are a lot of just named Night Questers that you use their war spell for.
Too true. So people are filing into Fort Gardus, and Gardus, he's a feeler. He's got deep emotions. He feels pain for these human folks. He was a healer in a past life, and he hates to see those afflicted by plague or these refugees fleeing the wilds of Guyran. And also he sees that this contingent of Caradhran are also fleeing into the fort as well, and they were serving as mercenaries. I think they were Grunstock Thunderers or something like that.
Yep.
They were mercenaries out there, and their ship was smashed to bits, and so they're here to I guess take up residence in Fort Gardus as well. Everybody fleeing the death and destruction out in Guyran.
Mostly just the destruction. There weren't any death forces in this army.
That's probably true, especially in the realm of life. Very less likely to be around.
There was a little piece here that I thought was really interesting where Gardus is embarrassed that this city is named after him.
Yep.
He basically is old enough to watch this hero worship erupt, and he's just I'm not super comfortable with it. But I guess it is what it is at this point, right? He's functionally becoming a demigod, right? And but he's still there, and he's but I'm just a person. I have problems and etc. But I guess I need to be the person that they want me to be, right? It's kind of a fun plot thread to this part.
I feel like we haven't had a book in Gardus' head in a while, but I feel like we're overdue. I think we need to get back into a Gardus POV, because I feel like he's got a very unique Stormcast perspective out there.
He always shows up in these big events because he was also in Broken Realms a few times.
Yeah, true. Did he die at the end of Broken? I can't remember.
He died in the middle of Broken Realms.
The best time.
Oh, he needed to die to go back to Azir, right?
Yeah, so he could talk to Croak.
Yeah, he talked to Croak. He had that whole subplot. I think he saves Vindicarium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He dies in Guyran so he can go protect Vindicarium.
Sure. And he needed to die in a place where the skies weren't bad so that he could, be reforged.
I don't think the skies were bad yet.
That's what I'm saying. He needed to die in a time and place before the skies got bad so that he, and now it's fine. The skies are cool in Guyran.
Yeah, we don't talk about the skies anymore.
They're bad when they need to be.
Yeah, and they're not bad when they're not bad. So at any rate, refugees fleeing into Fort Gardus. Gardus is what are we going to do about this? What do we do? We don't find out for a little bit because we're going to switch perspectives, I think, again. We've talked about the Crusades. We've talked about King Broad. Let's go back to the Oryx. These chasing these winged Stormcast through the woods. They lose them, obviously, because if Stormcast doesn't want to get caught, he ain't gonna be. And they're pretty upset about it. the orcs go smashing through that grim dark forest, causing just destruction, not death and destruction. And now another faction comes into play because they then end up taking off what's her Dritcha and her mean Sylvaneth, not the nice ones, the mean ones.
The outcasts.
The outcasts. I guess. I mean, maybe if you
Hey-ya.
weren't so mean, you wouldn't be.
Hey-ya.
They should just shake it like a Polaroid picture. But they don't. So they've lost their quarry. They don't know what to do. Hornsplit is pretty upset. But what does he do?
They just see the massive footprints, and so they go chasing after it, and then they come upon King Broad, and they're worried that King Broad is going to stomp them. And then like Zogrok just like appears behind King Broad's legs, like, nah, man, we're already cool. Like, we're already good with them. Come join us.
Nice, perfect. Point is when you join Gargants and Orcs together, you're in for a smashing good time, I think. We're not quite there yet. They're teasing this destruction of Fort Gardas, but it doesn't. We're going to shift perspectives yet one more time, and turns out the Sylvaneth are pretty ticked about all people traipsing through their woods, and they're going to take it out on whoever they see first. And as we had mentioned before, the Crusade has stepped foot into their woods, and they've got a target painted on their back. Church is pretty upset. She was just looking for a reason, and it seems as if they're going to, just fall upon our cities, our Dawners, and the Crusade, almost as if before it got started. That's not true. They've been doing this for a while. Where do we go from here? Is it a bloodbath?
No, basically, there is some blood. There are soldiers who are just getting picked off from the sides of the caravans. And they all start getting ready to fight and to just tear each other apart. But then you've got one of the flutist, Sylvaneth, show up, basically telling Drisha that she needs to cool it. The Everqueen gave these guys permission to be here. They're not the ones who did all this damage, and that she needs to kind of fall in line of what Alariel wants, which is to help these Crusaders get to where they're going.
When has Dritcha ever listened to Alariel, though? I was surprised that she, spoiler alert, she's like, yeah, cool, fine.
I think it was specifically mentioned because it is a specific message for her from Alariel.
Yeah. Okay.
As opposed to just being like, oh, I'm from the Dreadwood, and I say Alariel says this, right? It was a specific marcher because the Luke guys are specifically the messengers of Alariel.
Yeah.
But
and Dritcha does not agree with it right away. She's like, well, what matters a dozen of their lives, 100, yada yada. Let's just kill them and then kill the sons of Behemoth. And I can't think of the name, but the Fey Piper basically says, yeah, but if you attack them as they're attacking Fort Gardas, it will be easier. And then that kind of gets her to fall in line.
She's like, oh, nice, easy. I'm down with that. What are they called?
Warsong Revenant.
Warsong Revenant. You've got it.
And this one specifically, his name is Tethemir of the White Sapling.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I like that. Sylvaneth is so cool.
Real, very fancy name.
All right, so basically a stay of execution for our Dawnbringers. I think all of our Order friends agree that Fort Gardas needs to be saved, and they will do what they can to, defend against the combined destruction forces. So we've got a little bit of a grand alliance off here to some degree. Order v destruction, the way it was intended.
And it's convenient because, Hammerhall Gira can use Sylvaneth as allies, and turns out they're going to use them in this campaign book as
what?
allies.
You're trying to tell me my fiction is like my game and my game is like my fiction?
Yes.
Madness.
Yeah, that's insane. That's ludicrous. And
I already did Outcast. I can't do Ludicrous too. I'm sorry.
Move. Trying to think of other ludicrous.
Move, Birch. Get out the way. Get out the way, Birch. Get out the way.
True. All right. So this all is the preamble to the main event, which is the siege, if you want to call it that, of Fort Gardas. Someone walk me through it. I get so turned around. I get so confused. Step by step, me. How's it go?
Okay. I'll take a start on it. So the status quo is the Sons of Behemoth and the Ironjaws arrive, but there is a magical force field called the Saint's Shroud, which is generated by holy relics from within the fort that, I don't know, provide a magical and physical barrier. And the forces of destruction can't quite penetrate it. But they chuck some boulders generally at the fort, but it doesn't, it kills some people, but doesn't, the fort is holding. And then Broad, a few things happen. One is all of the Sons of Behemoth start to stomp, and that seems to weaken the shield significantly because they unify their stomps, and that does damage to the whole thing all at once. And it pulls in some, it's like becomes magical in nature, the stomping. That is a further assault. And then the pigs start all charging at the same time. And led by the Tuska boss. And they charge right down the main gate. And then right before they hit, they get powered up by our named Ironjaw's character.
Zogrok Anvil Smasher.
Yeah, Anvil Smasher. He turns the lead pig into like a rocket, like a wah rocket. And then all of that together smashes open the front gate, and then it's chaos. Like there's pigs inside the building. The Sons of Behemoth can start striding around and through, and they're like eating people and smushing stuff. And then it's like it's really bad.
Pandemonium. So I really love the Mega Gargants stomping their feet and clapping their hands, because it's really a proclamation that we will rock.
And rocking they were.
Yeah.
You know what? I think Gordrock should have tried this at Excelsis. I feel like we literally were just having an orc charge at a gate scene. It seems like yesterday, but here we are again. And this one worked better. So forget your magic battering rams. Just make a pig rocket and you'll be set.
Rocket.
I was just saying one cool thing is this, it's kind of one of the only things that Zogrok Anvil Smasher does, which pretty sure is a listener question from patron Drake, which is, does the new Ironjaw hero, Zogrok Anvil Smasher, have any narrative presence? Sort of.
Got it.
He already made the deal between the Ironjaws and the Mega Gargants before the rest of the Ironjaws showed up. And then he provided this ward-breaking ability to the Ironjaws, which is the one thing he does. We don't get into the rules too much, but on his war scroll, all he does is help other units break wards.
Oh.
And so here he is doing that on a much larger scale.
Interesting. All right, that's cool.
Yeah.
Neat. Yeah. So it's gone wild inside of Fort Gardas. Like we said, they're within the enemies in the walls, within the walls, stomping and pigging and left and right. Is this? Well, it is eventually. Is this the end? Is there no one left to defend this city?
Not yet. Now we have the traditional Warhammer battle, and then other guys show up.
Mm-hmm.
So this is when our united Sylvaneth Dawners force arrives. Including a named character as we keep track, because Drycha's there, and she's a character with her own model. So you're like, well, maybe they do have a shot. So they show up, but quickly they realize it's hopeless. So there's no point, because the battle's already lost, and that becomes pretty apparent. And it's just about getting people out, particularly the refugees that have all taken up within the Basilica of Martyrs.
There's a secret exit right in the Basilica or something like that, but in order to draw the attention of let's say King Broad specifically, to say nothing of the rest of his army, Gardas is going to take it upon himself to distract the king, so that he's going to selflessly distract them so that the refugees can flee, which is a very similar, kind of a similar scene that we were seeing at Truce Break to some element. And is it between him and Admiral Krufen and the Grunstock Marines? They're also, they had sworn oath to Gardas to sort of stay to the last and provide cover fire for the.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's interesting because in the Action Crusade, like we lose a lot of the actual Crusaders to their last stand to buy time. Luckily for the Gyranian Crusade, the people who are buying them time weren't in their crusade. It's like the Hallowed Knights of Fort Gardas and these new Caradron, who they probably didn't even know were there in the first place.
Yeah, extras.
Because Tornus and the Redeemed, they send message to Marshal Thorian to like, hey, get out, we're going to leave, we're going to head out of here and continue marching.
Yeah, I have to say this moment is one of my favorite in the book because it has one of my favorite pieces of artwork that I've seen in anyone.
Mm-hmm.
There is a painting of Gardas launching himself off of the city wall at King Broad, and it is amazing. I really hope that we see somebody do that for Golden Demon.
Presumably, after he challenges King Broad and names him a fool and a coward. I can't have a hard time picturing Gardas using those words, but I love it that he did. Good job, man. Call him as you see him. So it's between this jump, the Admiral and his sharpshooters are releasing a flurry of missiles at the Mega Gargant, and he flinches and he shields his face. And it's then when Gardas jumps up and swings at him. But what happens though? I don't want to be the one.
I mean, he jumps and he smashes him right in the face and knocks him over.
Mm-hmm.
And then King Broad catches him and squeezes him, and then he pops into a lightning bolt.
Boom.
And then the battle's over. Refugees escape. Fort Gardas falls. King Broad is fine, presumably. This another win for destruction, another loss for our Dawnbringer.
I want someone to write in and tell me how many times Gardas has now been reforged, because it's getting up there. I mean, it's you can still count them on one hand, I'm pretty sure, but it's more than once.
Yeah.
Because then when he died, one of the first times is where he got his weird light that he has, like that he just like is bright now. I wonder if that's still true. Pour one out for our silver boy, off to greener pastures, and that is, I guess, the end of the Gyran story. Do you guys have any other final thoughts? Did we miss anything?
Yeah, the Gyran Crusade escapes. They bug out just like the Action Crusade does, like with the refugees, with a bunch of Hallowed Knights, both the ones that were part of their crusade and the few folks that survived the fall of Fort Gardas, and they keep trudging north.
Not trudging. Oh, hopefully.
Hey.
Yeah, I guess, right? He gets back home and he's like, who are these Crusaders?
So, yeah, that's another bastion of order kind of wiped from the map.
Sure,
Fort Gardas have been on there for a while.
It's been there for a bit, too. Agreed. All right, cool. I've got a couple questions that people had about the plot-based stuff. We might as well get into them while we're here. Minervis wanted to ask, compared to the previous book, what's the sense of plot progression and development we get? Trying to think how to answer it here. I guess we had alluded to it initially. Like, do we think this is a plottier book?
So there's definitely there's more plot than the prologue. You're still not getting as much plot as something like Broken Realms, but here we do have more known characters of the Mortal Realms featuring in these stories, even if they're not like the main show. Like, oh, cool, Gardas is here, and goodbye, Gardas. Oh, Dredja's here. Bye, Dredja. Talia's here. Bye, Talia. Like, they come and go, but it's nice just kind of seeing them be woven into the story a bit. We're going to talk about it more later on, I would say, but there is like a section that has like other plot threads not directly connected to these crusades that do kind of get moved forward. And I think that's where the big, like, quote unquote global scale kind of happens.
Yeah, true.
Definitely more stuff happens in this book than the previous book. But I agree that it doesn't have the same kind of meta ramification that any Broken Realms book, but I think it's supposed to have a tighter focus.
Yeah.
So we know what's going on with the Dawnbringers, and it's not going good.
Yeah.
And we made a lot of progress that way.
Well, and I think the main reason that I got for that was because this is very much a destruction-focused book.
Yeah.
Right? And Broken Realms is very much an order-focused book. So even though we're really focusing on the Dawnbringer Crusades, a lot of the actual impetus is coming from destruction. And you're really not going to be discussing like, motivations and stuff like that for destruction besides, oh, yeah, you killed my father, I'm going to come kill you, right? Or I have a headache. But yeah, I think we might see some more of that going forward, though. We might see some more order stuff, I would think.
Yeah. What is interesting is we do have like order factions that appear, and I don't think they're going to appear later on, but they didn't really get anything from this book. Like all the destruction factions we see, the Ironjaws and the Gloomspike they get new models and like new named characters. Mm-hmm. But like the KO don't get new models. They get some cool new rules. The Sylvaneth get nothing. They like, hey, we're here. And then now they're gone. And I don't know if that counts as like their one mandated appearance and we'll never see them again, like the Flesh Eater Courts.
I think it could be. I think you see that a lot, right? Like in these campaign stretches, they try to give everybody a little bit of a spotlight. And obviously the size of the spotlight varies faction by faction as to who's getting new stuff or what have you. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was the only Sylvaneth view that we got. Yeah. Which would also be a bummer, but so be it.
Yeah, it's just weird because it's there, like it's the Sylvaneth realm that we're in right now.
It's everybody's realm.
That's Nurgle's realm.
Yeah, true.
I also think we'll see Flesh Eater Courts again. I think as of the teases we've gotten out of this book, and maybe we'll get to that, like as far as big bads, I think Flesh Eater Courts could rear their head again.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask another question. Patron of the show, Armoire Enthusiast 7. Still hunting down 1 through 6, though. We'll get them. As the Crusades move to either their success or failure, what do you think the ramifications of each will be? Could there be some sort of transformation for either or both upon the end of the Crusade? I don't know. The sky's the limit. It could be anything at this point. I think we're way too early, at least for me, in the Crusade itself, to have any glimpse of what it'll end up being. I'm not even sure what success looks like anymore.
Right.
What do you guys
I will say it's incredibly hard to tell for the Gyranian Crusade because we didn't get any of those like inner Crusade politics or focus on those characters. But for the Axian one, we are seeing like, when they launched the Crusade, it talked about all of their artillery, the new steel helms, the cavaliers that they had, and how it's very much like this industrial army. And now it's mostly going to be Pontifex Sinistra leading a more religious crusade. And so I think that ramification is going to be like how this crusade conducts itself moving forward is going to be different from how they initially hoped they were going to conduct themselves.
And as far as like a transformation goes for the Gairan one, maybe that one becomes more of a ragtag combination of like things as opposed to it's set out as sort of in some ways a unified front, right? But like now that they've lost and gained, like that it becomes a patchwork of disparate factions, and maybe that theme I don't know, but maybe that theme carries on going forward, right? And it's sort of the found allies along the way, and like a crusade can be made up of a bunch of different things. It doesn't always have to be just like your classic like Cities of Sigmar. Is one way it could go. I wonder.
Yeah.
Paven or Paul, you got thoughts?
Yeah, I'm really not sure what the results of these crusades will be. I don't even know what I want to happen.
That's kind of what I meant. Yeah.
Like there's lots of cities in Gairan and Akshi.
But each one has one less now.
Yeah, well, we didn't lose any like big city. We lost a lot of small map markers.
I'll ask this then, and this is a question from Armoire Enthusiast. They want to know, do we have an updated prediction on which crusade we think is going to succeed or will fail? I think we had our predictions last time. I can't even remember what my answer was for the first time, but any updated predictions? Has anybody changed their mind as to which one they think will succeed or?
I forget what I had said, but like, I know I had said it's going to flip-flop between books and then it's going to land on one at the very end. I am now convinced that because Akshi is on the back foot so much and they've suffered so many losses that they have to succeed.
They have to. There's no other choice.
Talia's going to come over the hill at the last moment in the final fight and save the city. And I think that Gairan is going to become a successful city of Flesh Eater Courts. I'm still going to go out there and say it.
Paven, you got a prediction an updated prediction on who's going to make it or not?
No, what Will says feels right.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Also, there's no more named characters in that guy right.
There's Tornus. He might get a model next book.
Tornus, Tornus,
does.
unmodeled Tornus, yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, the problem is Stormcast don't have plot armor because they can die in the couple.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that is its own plot armor, kind of, but that's true.
Yeah, true.
Paul, do you have an updated who's going to succeed or fail prediction?
Not really. I mean, I want Actually to fail because I want Trug to be amazing. That's about all I can say. Right?
I wouldn't be surprised if we never see Trug again throughout the rest of this.
Don't you dare.
Yeah.
I mean, put $1 on it.
Literally painting the rolls of fat on his body right now. He better show up.
So appealing. I forgot to mention, actually, patron of the show, Drake, had asked this question too. Wanted to know which Crusade was going to fail or what have you. I think just because I have to be contrary, I can see why the Axian could win, but I'll say the Gyran may win just so we can see who's right. So, like, from this current vantage point, I think, especially considering, well, no, you're right, with the Flesh Eater Courts, and I'm pretty convinced they're coming too. Like, they'll then be the newest thing, and they'll have to get their win, and so, like, that means that the Gyran Crusade has to fail. No, you're right. Actually, it's probably the right answer.
But Gyran is in the best spot right now. So, like, if you're following along at home, this is the end of the second quarter, and they've got more points.
Sure. Yeah.
What does that mean for the finale? Who knows? Still
guessing, though. Yeah, still guessing. All right. More questions from Armoire enthusiasts. Want to know, was there any full goth or Surgerian sightings? Don't think so. Unless you guys know something I do.
No, didn't show up.
Yep. And then with the clear foreshadowing and description of Trug in the last book, do we have any similar portents for upcoming models in this book? That's a broad question. Let's talk about from the plot, from the story. Were there any hints what future models coming? And then maybe we'll circle back to this question after we get to the end.
Yeah,
covered everything else.
Yeah, I just said it. I think maybe Tornus.
Yeah.
But there's no like rumors of anything going on. There's no rumors of like the next big bad necessarily. Just Tornus as a character. It'd be cool if you got a model.
Anything else in like the plot in terms of like the events in this like story as a whole that hints at anything coming up? I don't have anything else.
They heavily allude to, like, in the final page of the Axian Crusade, as running into the Bloodbound, like the Cornate hordes. So it didn't point to it. I guess later we're going to talk about if anybody specific was talked about. But they just mentioned that, that's where they are. They're in Corn City now, in Capillaria. So that's probably who they're going to have to fight next.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep on keeping on. Other points of interest. Obviously, folks are probably most interested. Well, after the story, obviously. Second, mostly interested in the new models and these new things, the new toys that we get. And folks want to know all about them, I'm pretty sure. So let's talk about the big guy first. Trug, the Troggoth King. I feel like we've covered him quite a bit in terms of how he got into the story, but let's squeeze him for any other things that we might be able to know about him. And to that end, Chrisling had a lot of hard-hitting questions about Trug, the Troggoth King, and so I feel like we should try to answer them if there are answers to be found. So I'm gonna fastball these questions out, and we can answer them real quick. Who drew the cave paintings on Trug? Do we know?
A whole bunch of people.
Yeah, right.
Basically, they carved it into his flesh while he was sleeping.
Yeah, they do reference the people who like may have done some of them, but who built the shrine on top of him. It's called the Androsian civilization. So that's one of the groups that's connected, and they are RIP, no longer with us.
Sure. That's actually a second question. Who built the device on his back? We're doing good. We have a steady clip. Here we go. King Trug seems to be an echo of King Throg from the old world. Does the book suggest any further parallels between them? I have no idea. Does anybody know?
No.
No, yeah.
And
we have an idea, no.
Wasn't Throg supposed to be smart for a troll?
Yes. And he's a chaos troll.
Yeah, he was an actual ruler of trolls, whereas Trug is just called the king because his antlers look like a crown, and Braggett is really good at marketing.
PR, yeah. He's stupid.
Plus, Throg is supposed to be back anyway, I think, or like that's who Sigvald is going after. He wants to kill him because he marred his great looks or whatever. That's a big plot thread for Sigvald. So
yeah, I know Sigvald is hunting down any Troggoth he sees. So I wouldn't be surprised if these two have a showdown.
That would be dope.
people have been making like, oh, are we going to see Sigvald versus Trug in this book at all? It's like their predictions, and no. But maybe down the road, it'd be super fun if Sigvald is just like yelling at Trug, lamenting all of the terrible things the previous Troll King had done to him, and Trug just not caring.
Shrug. Yeah. Yes, related in your opinion, is Trug's 7-pointed star an homage to Trog? Sounds like we don't think so. Also, what is the 7-pointed star?
So on page 23, there's like a picture of Trug, and they're just on his arm. You can see it's like a diamond with 7 little dashes on it.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Okay.
give me 1 second. I'll compare it to the model quick.
There's also a Skaven marking on his tummy.
Yeah,
so
I think
like,
it's just graffiti.
I think it's just, I guess, who drew these cave drawings on him. The Skaven did one.
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Or some messed up person who's like, yeah, check this out.
I mean, and not to beat a dead horse here, but
Gross.
a lot of the drawings look very similar to the drawings that I've seen on Kragnos, right?
Yep.
Like it looks very, very similar. So
Yeah.
not that Kragnos is dead, but you know.
Yeah. I think that's just their shared language of this is like from the Age of Myth that GW uses. Like, oh, cave drawings, Age of Myth.
Well, which is interesting because the Age of Myth is like the farthest you can get from cave drawings, right?
Right.
So it is, yeah. We'll see how that develops.
Yes, or they ask, is Trug classified as a Dankhold Troggoth? And if not, what distinguishes them from him? Is he Dankhold?
Yeah, it's they don't say it here, but he looks like a Dankhold, and his war scroll has Dankhold on it.
Yeah, there you go. I think that would be the real connector. And then want to know, is Trug's Trog herd notably larger than other Trog herds? Is it bigger than a breadbasket? I'm not sure. It's as big as they need to be, right? Like,
Yeah, because I don't think we see many other like important Trog herds. So it's like there's no other Trog herd really to compare it to, but I would assume it's larger just because he's the king, so he's going to have more.
There was one in the Gloomspite Gitz battle tome, but it's hard to know number. Like Age of Sigmar is always very nebulous about how many. It's an army, like a massive army, like a small army. It's an army. Okay, sounds
2,000 point,
right.
2,000 point Trog.
Right. All battles in every book are just at 2,000 points.
Yeah, well, obviously from consistency standpoint, how would you know they were balanced otherwise?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so that's the one standout, I guess. Named character, big old centerpiece model, very interesting. Now we got a bunch of new Iron Jaws units. I don't know that we need to talk about every single one of them, so instead I'll ask you guys if you wanted to pick out your favorites, or I mean, you could also talk about the ones you're working on, but you don't have to. You talk about whatever one floats your boat. What are some fave new Iron Jaw units or models out there?
I am going to call it the one I'm working on.
Nice.
As soon as I get this cap to stop scratching my chair.
Cat stretch?
Okay.
Sure.
But yeah, the Maugrentas, the huge big pig rigs. I love it just because the way people can ride these things, because they're massive. And in the book, they're not controlled really. Like the most you can do is like tug on their ears to kind of steer them in a certain direction. And so in order to ride one of these things, an Ironjaw will ride a regular Gorgrenta at it head on, crash into it, fly through the air, and then grab onto it. And it's one of the biggest pieces of entertainment Ironjaws have, to watch these guys go splat against rocks like 9 times out of 10. It's very orky because like you've got that 40k like orcs that's like kind of goofy, kind of funny, but the Iron Jaws are very much like brutal and devastating, and they're not really a joke in any way. And here we see some of that jokiness come back into the army.
I mean, the Iron Jaws always look cool. They're a great,
Yeah.
great faction with a great aesthetic, and they had an initial release with AOS 1, and then they were an incredibly popular army, and they were never expanded.
Yeah.
And it's great to see an expansion. They're replacing the old Black Orc kit, the old Ardboard kit with Ardboys kit with a new one.
Yeah.
That looks really good.
Yeah.
And then they're adding a bunch of characters and a new giant monster kit and another round of elite infantry. Yeah, it's all really great.
You want to tell me about the weird brute Rekkas, the guys that you're working on?
Yeah, they're orcs that have gone a little nuts, and the solution is to nail like crazy masks to their faces, which doesn't fix them being nuts, or kind of does, or they just become a different kind of crazy, and then they give them these giant like wrecking balls and send them to the front.
Yeah, it's a different kind of crazy because they're throwing up green vomit, and so now they're just crazy and hit things. They're no longer puking. So if your stomach hurts, nail a mask to your face and you'll be fine.
Any advice given on the Moral Realms podcast should not be construed as medical advice, and we are not liable for any, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, those guys are pretty neat, and I do. In some ways, I was like, "Oh, well, you're stealing the idea from the Fanatics," but like they also look super cool. So I'm like, I don't care that you're stealing the idea from the Fanatics.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also have a kind of brute slayer thing going for the dual build for that kit.
Yeah.
Where if a orc is ever humiliated by losing or getting beat up or something, they take off their armor and grab the biggest weapon they can find and then go fight like that in order to show how tough they are. And so that's the other thing they do.
Don't ever mention to them. Don't ever bring up their loss because they'll freak out on you.
Yeah.
Paul, did you have a favorite new Iron Jaws thing?
I mean, Clonk is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Clonks.
I mean, I'm not a huge Iron Jaws guy, but I would totally take that squig and add that to my my Gits army.
Actually, speaking of Clonk, patron of the show Drake was asking were there any wholesome moments with Clonk, the lovable anvil squig. Any Clonk moments?
Not in the story, but in his little unit entry thing, it does mention that he's an amble squig because he's got these hard things growing on his head that give him terrible headaches. And the only way to fix the headaches is to just beat him over the head. So that's how he becomes an amble squig. So really when Zogrok amble smashes, smashing him in the head, he's helping him.
Yeah.
It's his medicine.
It's not an abuse thing. It's it's therapy. Neat. My favorite guys, and the lore isn't what's interesting to me, but just literally having the new Art Boys, I'm so thrilled because I have a relatively complete Iron Jaws collection, except for the fact that I refused to buy the old Art Boys, and so that's always been a hole in my collection. But I wasn't going to do it. So now that they've been, I never would have believed that they were going to replace that unit. Either I would have thought they would have squatted it or just had it in perpetuity. So they're awesome. The thing about Art Boys is that they aren't as cool as brutes. They're not as good warriors, or they haven't proven themselves like the brutes are. So they are sort of a lesser cast or what have you. However, at this point, although the brutes look awesome, the Ard Boys look, in my mind, so much cooler than the brutes do. And I'm like, oh no, this is such a downgrade. You get promoted to brutedom, you look worse in my mind.
They might be one of the first armies in AOS to do this, but I don't think they're going to be the last, where they took a unit that existed in Warhammer Fantasy, the Black Orcs.
Yeah.
They then built an army and a model line around that aesthetic with the Iron Jaws. And now they're going back to those original models, redoing them in the new aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's a very cool and interesting, okay, now they're not just redone Warhammer Fantasy models. They are Ard Boys done in the style of how they envisioned Iron Jaws being.
Yeah. So I'm thrilled. Like I think they look awesome, and I'm glad that they did it. But I'm now like it's almost as if now you got to upgrade brutes now. Like brutes still look great.
Right.
They fit the theme. Like there's nothing wrong with them. It's just that in my mind the Ard boys look so much better. And if you want to prove that brutes are better than Ard boys, you have to like turn up the dial a little bit on them. But maybe that's just me.
So it makes you wonder, though, what other kits are they going to just do an upgrade on, right? Because
Yeah,
we do have a decent amount of kits that are older, that are in some existing armies, and it's like, oh, well,
yeah.
what
I
are
mean, we talked about that a lot in that, like, yeah, how rare it is for them to upgrade plastics from, Warhammer Fantasy, but there's precedent. They do it. It's just not a super common thing. But yes, I'm always thrilled when they do so. Black Coach, great example, super cool. And I feel like we tried to make a list once, and there was some others, but I can't remember what they are. Listeners, you can write.
Well, I mean, Spider Riders, Ragnarok, right? Those are old world kits.
Oh yeah, no, I was thinking one examples of plastics that they have upgraded already. But yeah, they very well could. No doubt. More to come. All right, any other new unit or model dudes that people want to talk about? All right. As far as other interesting stuff, guess what? There was another storyline. You know how, hey, listeners, you know how there are like timelines in battle tomes? They kind of use that formatting in a little bit to tell us about other events that are happening around the same time of the story that we've been reading, to tease or tickle the senses. That's a weird way to put that. Entice us to think of other story threads that may come to fruition. And there's a couple that we probably want to talk about, maybe even all of them, I guess. Does anybody have a favorite of the teaser story threads that they are anxiously looking into?
Yeah, so I'm going to say, I have one that's a more favorite, but I know someone else is going to talk about it. So I'm going to say The Wrath of Carthalos. So this ties into the attack on Hammerhall Aksha, the reason Talia Vedra had to leave the Crusade. And so we've got, Khorne attacking the city, and we've got Skaven attack from inside. We've got, Scylla Anfingrim attacking everything with their bloodbound horde and really just tearing up Hammerhall. But the thing that really is bad is that the Skaven got into the Ashen Cloister, which is it's a storm vault, right?
I think so.
It's either the storm vault known as the Ashen Cloister. This thing has shown up several times.
Yep.
As just like, we can't let anyone break into this. In the Stormcast battle tome, it's one of the stories of Bastian Carthalos, of him and his Stormcast going down in there to deal with a threat and then just coming out covered in ash, saying they don't want to talk about it. In the first Dawnbringers book, the reason the Fire Slayers needed to kill the Gloomspite is because the Stormcast were too busy defending the Ashen Cloister. And now it's broken free. And some of the things that are trapped in there are shards of basically a demigod that is like a Lord of Flame. I forget his exact name, but it hinted at being related to Hashut and the Chaos Dwarden. So this could be a thread that may bring them back. But it also has Skaven, so it could be a thread that may come to Skaven later on in a story somewhere.
That's a good one. It's maybe one of the more ones I find most interesting, in fact.
Yeah.
What other of these story threads do you guys find interesting?
Well, for me, it's Korg's Call in Rondel. Remember how you're like, hey, no, not you, but like, listener, I remember you're like, why is he talking about Korg's Call? Korg's Call's in this book at all? You didn't talk about it at all.
The listeners texted me to ask me that, yeah.
Actually, we did, because Korg's Call is talked about specifically in White Dwarf, when this whole like Rondel campaign that they've had for the past almost year. And in this little entry, they're like, oh yeah, no, this thing totally happened. And this is part of who he is. Oh, by the way, he kind of won and he disappeared with all of his champions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, something's happening. So, I mean, there's so much going on here. He's been really, really prevalent in the lore. So either we could get a new Korg's Call model, or we could get a new Korg's Call Demon Prince. or a Korgus Cold Bloodthirster, especially if he disappeared with all of his champions. Like, we could see anything coming from that, from a spawn to a greater demon.
Yeah, and he disappears immediately after he asked Korn to recognize him on the path to glory.
Yep.
So it's like, hey, give me stuff, and then he's gone.
Sure. And like, because what he was doing, he was flooding the rivers of Rondel with gore. And like it was like the flood waters rose, and like didn't they rise up and like sort of whether they washed him away or what have you. Like he off shuffled from this mortal coil.
Well, his point was to like choke the continent on blood.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Like basically infect it. So, and he succeeded.
Yeah. Right. And so like, if it was anybody else, it would just be an interesting story. But like, it was him, and they made it a point to tell the story in this book. So I think like that they're not just doing it willy nilly. That has purpose.
Well, and they had planted the seeds in the White Dwarf Flashpoint Rondel story, and it is in one of the timeline stories it's like the very last one in the Khorne Battle Tome of like, oh, and if you're wondering where Korgus Kol is, he's in Rondel and he wants to kill a continent anyways, and then just kind of brush past it.
Yep.
You don't have to, but Paven, did you have a favorite?
Well, I might as well pick the last one. And this is it's called Soul Bright's Quest. And you might not remember, but in AOS 2, we launched with the, what chamber was that? The
Sacrosanct.
The Sacrosanct chamber. And there was a named character that was, I don't know, ever used, named Asteria Soulbright, which was a Lord Arcanum. And her deal is trying to like fix the flaw in the reforging process. Mm-hmm. And she's tracking down a lead for a noble prince of death whose touch could soothe trauma afflicting a mortal soul. And what she's led to a place called the Summer Keep. So Summer Keep, Summer King, and it doesn't go too much further than that. Besides that, her and the other Stormcast go to this place, and they are being observed with hungry eyes. And you can very much assume that it's Flesh Eater Courts.
Especially because she rolls up on the coastline called Charnel Court, and you're like, okay.
That's another giveaway. So, like, why bring this up except that, it's one of our loose threads is who's the Summer King, what's going to happen there. We know that's in the realm of what is happening with the Gyronite Crusade. So I would call that one of our loose threads.
Yeah. Well, and to build off of that, actually, a separate little story in the same area of the book is yet another, I think, hint in that regard, where they talk about this vintner in, I think, Hammerhall, and how he just went crazy at one point and proceeded to eat his family and all his his servants and stuff like that. And so they were investigating, like, why would he do that? This is insane. Mm-hmm. And it turns out he had been like sent a package or something recently. I'm trying to remember.
It was wine.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, wine mixed with blood, and apparently, some suspect that had something to do with this. So he had been sent this wine from. In fact, we don't know who it's from. Or no, for his death, the vintner was speaking of a coming of a Summer King. So yet again, the Summer King. More than one thread for our Flesh Eater Court hints. Which is very
almost
exciting.
A tapestry of clues, you might say.
A ragged tapestry of clues. All right, so those are some hints of what may be coming. Sorry, I had to sort of separate it from the question that we had asked previously. Yeah. Were there any other hints that we missed elsewhere in the book that folks think might allude to future events? Sounds like no. Awesome. Let's keep on going. We just got a few more listener questions that potentially we might be able to answer quickly, or a lot of them are related. We'll get through that. So, for whatever reason, you people wanted to talk about Grand Alliances and sort of how it relates to destruction, a very hot topic. I'm going to rattle off a bunch of questions that were related to each other, and you guys can pick what pieces of them you found interesting and want to answer. So, in no particular order, Gork's Broken Finger asked, does this series thus far make the forces of destruction seem like an imminent foe on par with chaos? Your dad Squig asked, do you think this book, along with the lore development in 3rd edition, give destruction armies and their characters more personality and motivation beyond Smash? they can see them compete with the likes of Archeon, Teclis, and so on and so forth. Well, or maybe I'll lie. Maybe I'll stop there. Maybe that's the two questions that go together. We'll pause there, and then we'll ask some more after the fact. So, is Destruction, has it come into its own? Is it on par with some of the other Grand Alliances out there? What do you guys think?
No. It's like, do they have a motivation beyond Smash? That's literally their only motivation that we see in the book. Yeah. The only one is like King Broad wants to specifically smash the Stormcast, but Trug and the Iron Jaws, they're just hitting whatever's in front of them.
Sure. Just not in this book. You could argue, all right, well, Kragnos is different because he has like a motivation behind his destruction, but he ain't here, so doesn't count. What do you guys think, Paven, Paul? Is Destruction better now?
Destruction looks great after this book in that they smash and win, and they take things off the map for order. I don't know if they feel like a existential threat like Death did in 2.0 or like Chaos does all the time. They didn't get a big enough win. Like I really feel like they should have smashed Excelsis at the end of last edition. But they haven't taken, nobody's knocked down a true City of Sigmar yet, which is what I would want to see. Like if Broad and Trug team up and destroy Hammerhall, like that would be like, oh snap.
Yeah.
But give it the realms are huge, and these, wiping out 2 dots is like cool in a book, but it doesn't make it feel like, destruction's gonna like rule the world.
Sure. Paul, what do you think?
I'm going to disagree and say that I do feel like Destruction does feel like a threat now. It's just not a pointed threat.
Yeah.
It is a blunt, obnoxiously uncontrollable menace. Right? And
like
to me, the way that it's demonstrated is it's not actually through Trug, because Trug's cool and Trug's awesome, right? But it's Braggot. Like, it's through the manipulation of the little things, right? And I enjoy that quite a bit. The idea that the little thing can make this obnoxious thing happen just because he's annoyed and he's like, hey, I want this thing to wake up, right? And to me, those are the most frustrating threats where you're like, but I have, like, why am I dealing with this right now? Because some stupid guy decided to be loud and obnoxious. This is why my city is being destroyed right now, right? Everything else has a lot more intent, right? Why is Death killing me? Because it hates me because I'm alive. Okay, great, right? Why is Chaos killing me? Because I'm stopping the world from falling to chaos. Why is Destruction killing me? Because it's dumb and it's decided this is what it's doing today, right? Woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Guess I'm going to kill a city. Moving on. Right, I enjoy that.
All right. Do I think that Destruction has more personality, or they're on par with Chaos? Like, for example, when Gorsh Pokenfigure asks, "Is it an eminent foe on par with Chaos?" No, but Chaos is always going to be the big one, right? Like, no one. It's not. They're not meant to be. In fact, I would say Death and Destruction are meant to be secondary to Chaos. The real game is Chaos versus Order, and I think that's evident in just the number of armies that each of the Grand Alliances have. It's not a 1v1 fight. That it makes for an interesting circle, I guess, where there's different combatants, but it's always going to be a sideshow. And so this has been a particularly interesting snapshot into that sideshow. But presumably this has an end, and we'll move on past it. So call them a force in nature. Call them, unstoppable forces or what have you. But you're not going to get in that level of complexity out of Destruction. But that's not their intention. I think it serves the purpose that they're meant to, and they do it very well. So, continuing our Grand Alliance questions, Minervus was asking, how do you feel about the more Grand Alliance orientation compared to how all the Broken Realms book had multi-faction orientation? And I think related to that question is Patron Drake's question. Is the book mostly Destruction focused, or is it shared with the Dawnbringers order? Is Death or Chaos mentioned? And I'm just going to keep going. Patron Mealhorn then asks, do Death and Chaos play a role play a role in the story, even though the book is mostly destruction. So they want to know the interplay between like the factions in this book. So for example, I'll say it's an order versus destruction book. They mentioned some chaos. They don't mention death at all. I think it's really those two are the marquee.
Yeah.
Is there any component to those questions that you guys have more you want to add to, or how you felt about it?
I would just say, because one of the questions is like, is it more focused for destruction or is it more focused towards order? The focus is split pretty evenly, but you're going to lean more towards order because they're going to carry through to the other, like they're the main characters.
The through line, yeah.
Yeah. But they did give a lot of focus to destruction, basically to introduce the new characters in terms of Trug and some of the new Iron Jaws. So they had to give them the spotlight a bit.
Any additional thoughts on that? Nope, simple ones. All right, now Sageman had a question. Sageman 14, they ask, what settlements are stated to be sending out Dawnbringer crusades? And I think they mean beyond just the Hammerhall cities. Were there other Dawnbringer references in the book? I thought there was, but I can't remember what the answer was.
I had to remember, because I know in like the Cities of Sigmar battle tome, the answer is all of them except for Phoenicium. Like it's actually part of the requirements to be a City of Sigmar is you have to do your crusades. Here, there's like a page for each realm of like what a crusade in that realm is like, but they don't really reference any of the like settlements. It's just like, oh, if you're a crusader in action, you're gonna have to deal with ash scorpids and fire keg beetles crawling into your boots. And if you are someone in Gyran, you have to deal with the rain, but they don't list any other cities or settlements.
Yeah, maybe I was thinking the Cities of Sigmar book that talked about other settlements.
That one calls out a lot of like specific ones, including like not even major cities, but smaller settlements, including Trucebreak. R.I.P.
They died how they lived. All right.
Break.
Another show question from patron Drake. They ask further developments on Callus and Toll's investigation. Was there any Callus and Toll in this book?
There was some, but there's been no further forward.
Yeah.
It was
really
a little bit of a
investigation.
placeholder, like, we still exist. This is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Don't send the entire military away. Oh, they did.
Oh no, they're already gone. Oh geez. Come back. Oh, they did. Oh, that's fun.
So I think they may come back in future books if the whole thing with the Ashen Cloister and Hammerhall actually continues in the Dawnbringer series. I think they may come back, but it feels like they're shunting that storyline off, and then we'll catch up to it later.
Sure.
When Talia reappears.
Well, guess what? I got a related question. Sagemud asks, given every Dawnbringer short story, and those are the short stories we were talking about that GW puts out on their website, on Warcom, every Dawnbringer short story has starred a model, named or otherwise, except the one with Callus and Toll. Do you think this means our cabal of fieldable witch hunters will go from 6 to 8? The implication being that will Callus and Toll get models? I bet they will one day. What do you guys think?
Yes. Especially since they actually have the Warhammer TV series now. Right? They did the episode with Callus and Toll. They've already done the character work. Somebody, like, they always say they don't make models because people tell them to. They make models that people are passionate about. Somebody did the character work for those models. Somebody's passionate about them. I think we're going to see them.
I agree. Does anybody think we won't see them? Because you're wrong. We're pointing fingers. Accusatory. All right. They're probably going to come. I think they'll probably show up at some point. And I think that brings us to the end of the listener questions that I wanted to ask today. And in that case, let's get to the most important question. What do you guys think about this book? Do I have volunteers to go first, or I'll just pick somebody? Paul's going first.
I really enjoyed this book for a number of reasons. I really like the lore. Like I said earlier, I like
really you like lore. That's crazy.
I know, right? It's weird. I like that I can envision the battles. I thought that was super fun. And the third reason is very esoteric, but I love the layout of this book. It felt like a battle tome instead of a campaign book. And what I mean by that is there was like a little introduction for each Dawnbringer Crusade. And then they had like the page of lore introducing the new characters for all the characters and for the new units. So it had a mix of campaign book and also battle tome stuff. And especially with the timeline of the 3 new things that had nothing to do with the events in this book, but are concurrent, right? It also felt very similar. So I found it really engaging because you kind of went from in the story to out of the story to in deep dives into the different characters. And I thought that was really well done. And I enjoyed reading that in particular. So,
Will or Paven? Arm wrestle.
I'll take it. Yeah, I really liked it. I know it's definitely not on the same scale as Broken Realms was, and we kind of do need a story in that larger scale for this edition, I think, just because of all those plot threads. But I also do like that we are getting these more lower POV stories. I don't know what GW has planned in the future, but I kind of like that we're focusing on these smaller crusades. And they're finding a way to naturally tie in characters in these areas for the most part. Like, oh, they're going through Gairan and they come across Gardas, which makes sense. Gardas lives in Gairan. Oh, they're coming across Dritcha, which makes sense because she's in this area. And we're still tying a lot of these named characters and seeing them without having to rely on, and they fell through a realm gate. On the flip side, a lot of the new characters just fell through a realm gate. I feel like they could have done a little bit more work of like putting them in that realm naturally. Like for Trug, I get it if you wanted him to be in Gairan, but then he could have been the bad guy in Gairan. But if you want to tie him to a specific realm and then appear somewhere else, a realm gate makes sense. For the Iron Jaws, I do not see a reason why we needed to know they came from Gur. It really didn't add anything to the story when they could have tied it more into that area itself. But I do love the cool scenes we get. I do think they do a better job of communicating like how the fighting happened, especially at a smaller level. I'm just kind of torn between like, I like these small stories, but also like we really do need some of those bigger stories as well. And if this is it, I'll be slightly disappointed, but I'm hoping that they do some big moves, even if it is just with the next edition rulebook.
Sure. Maybe they'll get bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Paven, what'd you think?
No, really, really fun book. I really enjoyed reading it. I like that it follows the 2 Crusades. I like that we have Crusades to follow now. I thought the battles were interesting. And I know we talked a lot about like who has the more special characters, who's going to win. But I don't think I was able to predict things too far in advance. Like I was actually pleasantly surprised how much destruction just whooped butt this whole book. I think that was refreshing, and it's like about time. And this is the era of the beast. Let's let the beast out. So I think that was all really cool. I feel like I have a better sense of these Crusades as characters, if you can think about them that way.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where they go to next. But the only thing I yearn for is like, how does this matter in like the broader Age of Sigmar context? Like what, like, if the Crusades disappeared, nothing would, at this point, nothing would change as far as like, anything that would have ramification for anything we know or care about. So I'm hoping to like tie in larger threads into these narratives. And I think that will happen. I'm excited for the next book.
I think for this, I started off a little lukewarm, and talking about it always makes me like the things better. And so I'm warmer than lukewarm, but still probably close to lukewarm. I wouldn't say I loved it. It's better than the first one, just because of the nature of the information it was delivered. Like the nature of what was going on was just going to be more interesting than the first one was. But the first one served as a backdrop and a prologue, and like that stuff is necessary, I suppose, too. So I get each one was serving a different role, so I get that. I've been waiting so long for another Broken Realms, and I guess you could say they all can't be Broken Realms, but like when you wait X number of years in between editions. Like they could be, they can all be Broken Realms, I think. And so I think maybe I was spoiled by those. I know we keep talking about them, but like it's hard not to compare against them. And so maybe it leads up to something that ends up Broken Realms like, as we've talked about. Maybe this gets broader and broader and has a bigger and bigger impact. But like the small scale and low impact on the realms at large are just slightly less interesting to me. However, I've said before, campaign books are my favorite types of things. I love seeing all the different factions interact when they don't always get a chance to. So like these are my favorite things. And so because of that, it gets all sorts of points in its favor because it's interesting. I think one thing that stuck out to me, and this is kind of what I was getting at, in the body of the episode, just a lot of dumb decisions being made, very contrived decisions clearly made just to sort of make the plot work the way they wanted it to. I guess that's how stories work. I understand that this is Games Workshop, like campaign book. This is Warhammer fiction. Like this, just sort of how it works. But this seemed like particularly obvious to me that people are making very dumb decisions to just sort of get factions or individuals in the right place at the right time. That like took me out of it to some degree. I don't know why to this day it still bothers me. It shouldn't. I should be used to it by now, but it still sticks in my craw a little bit. But all in all, I like seeing whenever you give me new units, new models, new things, I'm a sucker for that stuff. So like by all means, keep shoveling it in my lap, and I will eat it up. Though this was an example of them not justifying where some of the new stuff came from. Like, we talked about the cities of Sigmar in the last episode, and like they justified why the cities look different now, right? Like what changed and made these new guys come from. But there wasn't really much of that on the Ironjawz front, I wouldn't say. And maybe that will come. Maybe this isn't the setting for that. I guess maybe you do that in a battle tome. But like, there's going to be that supplement that comes out. I don't even know what that looks like or what it's going to be. But there wasn't as many like unique reasons for why the Maw Grunters weren't always around or something like that. But I guess they don't have to do it every single time, though I wish they would. I'll stop there. So I definitely enjoyed it. Glad I read it, and I'm, as always, looking forward to the next one. Any other parting thoughts before we shut her down?
No, to say just those last 3 threads and stories, the Cole, the Soulbright, and the Carthalos one, I really like those. I think they need to continue doing those because they are bringing and like following along some of those larger threads. So even if it doesn't get Broken Realm scale, we will have an idea of where the story is going to go as a backdrop to this Crusade story that's happening.
Well, it's not, and it's a good reminder that like these are pretty focused up. This Dawnbringer stories are 2 different focused stories, right? But like the world's still moving. Things are still, I was going to say spinning. I don't know if the realms spin, but so it goes to show that like there are still larger events happening in the world, and that's what I care most about. Like I care about the larger earth-shaking, quote unquote, realm-shaking events. So, all right, cool. Well, let's shut her down. It's time for our reforging, but Sigmar willing, we'll be back soon. Like, subscribe, share, or leave a review. Join us on Discord, drop a tip on our Patreon. Anything you can do will spread the word of Sigmar farther than we can on our own. Chat with us anytime about your thoughts on Twitter at The Mortal Realms. Paul, where can they find you online?
At PJ Shard.
And Peyton, where can they find you on the internet?
They can't.
Ha! Good luck, suckers. All right, and then Will, where can they find you on the World Wide Web?
Either Twitter/X or Threads as Age of Sever, or Blue Sky simply as Sever.
And I'm Aaron. You can find me at Dosesos on Twitter and I think Threads. And you can find all our Mortal Realms shows and content at www.themortalrealms.com. www.themortalrealms.com. And guys, I'm sleepy tonight. And I don't even have new babies.
We got first day of school tomorrow, so we got.
Oh wow,
me too.
First day of school for one of them. But we had the first day of school last week, so a little less casual.
I'm excited to get him out of this house.
Yes,
great.
It's really bad.
Pandemonium. I can't talk. Pandemonium.
Pandemonium.
Got it.